Today, I found out that my roommate is a kleptomaniac, as she has literally been stealing from me and everybody else in the house we all live in. And right now, I want to move out, but I seriously am not sure what to do next. Here's what's going on. So I lived in a shared boarding house, and I share a small room with one of my college friends who we will call Lily for the sake of the story. At first, it felt nice to live with someone I already knew. We split rent and everything seemed fine. But after a few months, I started noticing strange things. Lily's closet was odd. She had a ton of random stuff like multiple bike chains, padlocks, and even hotel-sized soap bars. I didn't think much of it at first, and I just assumed that she liked to collect things or maybe had her reasons. Then one day I noticed that one of my favorite pairs of pants had gone missing. I figured maybe it got mixed up in the laundry or someone accidentally took it, but 3 days later I saw Lily wearing my pants. I recognized the ink stain on the hem of it, so there was no doubt it was mine. Now I was shocked, but I didn't confront her directly because I was still trying to process it. Maybe she thought it was hers or something like that, but it was still weird. But then things escalated. Over the next month, more and more people in our boarding house started losing clothing, especially from the shared clothesline area. At first, we thought it was just mix-ups, but it became too frequent, and some items were too specific to be accidents. One of the girls in the house became suspicious and suggested we do a room-by-room check, and everyone agreed just to clear the air. When they came to our room, I let them in without a problem, but when they checked Lily's closet, they found a lot. Clothing that didn't belong to her, including stuff other girls had reported missing. Not just clothing, but weird things too. Random soaps, multiple padlocks, a bike chain, and even an empty shampoo bottle that someone else recognized. Well, it turns out that Lily might be a kleptomaniac. I was completely creeped out. I never imagined the person I slept next to every night was stealing from not only me, but everyone around her, and not even valuable stuff. Just small, bizarre things. And now I want to move out as soon as possible. But some people say that I'm being too harsh, and that I should be more understanding because kleptomania is a mental health issue. And don't get me wrong, I get that, and I do feel sorry for her, but I also feel incredibly uncomfortable and violated. So am I overreacting for wanting to leave and cut contact? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, anyone who's trying to blame you for wanting to move out is insane. Yes, it's a mental health issue, but guess what? They're not managing it. And before you know it, all your stuff is gonna be gone. Like seriously, this is an easy one. I would be moving out tomorrow if I found out my roommate was stealing from me, which is of course after getting all my stuff back from my scumbag roommate. So no, you're not the jerk, and honestly, I think it might be a good idea to start that process sooner than later, because having a roommate like that is honestly incredibly sketchy. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mom is constantly asking me for money, to a point where I literally feel guilty if I don't do it, and I'm honestly not sure what to do now. Here's what's going on. I'm a 17-year-old female, and I live in a single-parent household with just my mom and my brother. I feel like my mom is holding me back and doesn't want me to be independent, and is taking advantage of me even though she claims she wants me to do better than her. She quite literally refuses to teach me how to drive, even though I'm almost 18 years old with a permit. I had a fast food job for about 6 months before I got fired, and I managed to rack up about $1,300. This money was my savings from my car, and mind you, it was her idea for me to save my money. Well, the second I got fired, she yelled at me for an hour, and then she guilt-tripped me about how she claims that I would rather save my money than put food on the table, and that I don't help out in the household, while also saying how I don't do anything in the house or appreciate her. Ever since that argument, she repeatedly kept asking for my money almost every single day. Half of it was on fast food, and half was used on my braces, which she totally blindsided me on that. So my money was gone in 2 to 3 months, and I ended up in negatives for months until just recently. And mind you, she still owes me money. I just graduated high school and I received graduation money, and I had not even had the money for an hour, and she already had to make me spend it. It's been like 2 weeks since I've graduated, and she has been asking me every day, even after I tell her no, I don't have it, yet she still just comes up with solutions and will just not stop bothering me about it. I'm honestly sick of it, and even though we do struggle, I feel like she purposely puts us in this predicament because she could choose to get another job but claims that she's scared. She chose for us to live in a place that we can barely afford, and I think it's honestly so selfish. At this point, I don't know what to do. I turn 18 in a week soon, but I'm afraid that if I say no to her and I put my foot down, she'll try to argue with me again, but also it's just not my responsibility to deal with her financial issues that she caused herself, because at the end of the day, you can only save and help yourself, and she isn't doing anything to do that. But also a part of me felt bad because it's like we can barely afford the bills, but then again, I resent her for this. So how do I keep my money a secret and keep it away from her? What should I do? Okay, honestly, I think you need to understand the fact that she is definitely using you. She's making it seem like, oh, if you don't give me this money, we're gonna starve. We're gonna get evicted. Or some other bogus excuse that she's coming up with. She is just trying to make you feel bad because you're the easiest target right in front of her. So on that end, first of all, there's nothing wrong with saving your own money. But secondly, she has no say over it. She literally should not have any access to it, and if you haven't done it already, you should definitely make a new bank account when you're 18 so that you have full control over your money and she can't even look at it. Because I bet what's going on right now is the fact that you're a minor. She's most likely on your account as well. So she can see, oh, you've got some money in there. And then she winds up her guilt-tripping routine and then you're the one that has to suffer. So yeah, I think it honestly comes down to the fact that you have every right to like completely tell her no and then to just literally save your funds and find a way to move out. Because your mom right now is treating you very poorly. And this is not something a 17-year-old should ever have to deal with. Am I overreacting for feeling hurt? After my girlfriend basically said she's not proud to introduce me to her friends, all because I'm a mechanic. Here's what's going on. I'm a 24-year-old male and I've been dating my girlfriend for almost a year. She's amazing, she's smart, she's driven, she's getting her graduate degree in clinical psychology. I mean, she is everything to me. Her friends are all in that same academic bubble and her family is pretty status focused. I didn't finish college and I work full-time as a mechanic and I actually really like my job. I make solid money and I'm proud of how far I've come without a degree. Well, anyways, she invited me to a dinner party this weekend to meet her friends and I was excited. I mean, it felt like a step forward. But right before we left, she got weirdly quiet and finally said, just try not to bring up work too much, okay? They could be a little judgy. I didn't even know how to respond when she said that. Then she added, it's not that I'm not proud of you. I just don't want you to feel awkward or out of place. And when she said that, that really hit me. I kept it together, but the whole night I felt off. I barely talked and it just felt like I was being prejudged before even walking in the door. When we got back to her place, I told her how much it hurt that it felt like she was really embarrassed of me. But she said I was twisting things and making it bigger than it was. She looked at me and said, I just want you to be the best version of yourself. Well, ever since then, I've been distant. She's acting all normal, but I just can't shake how it made me feel. I don't know if I'm being too sensitive or if this is something that I should just brush off, but right now I'm wondering if I'm overreacting because this really hurt. Oh man, this really does suck. For the record, being a mechanic is a totally fine job. So for me, the way your girlfriend's acting is super toxic, and it kind of leads me to believe that she's drinking the Kool-Aid her family's giving her. Like she's believing what they're saying about him, and so she's trying to be like, okay, well just don't talk about your job that much. Like that would really sting, like good lord. You're proud of your work, you work really hard, I could imagine. I know I could never be a mechanic, like that's way too complicated for me. And here she is trying to be like, let's just get through this and you just not mention your job because they're gonna judge you. Which also says, oh, and by the way, I'm not gonna support you if they do that vocally. So no, I don't think you're overreacting and I don't think this is something you should just brush off because in my opinion, this is a big red flag of how the rest of your relationship could be if you guys end up getting married. And so far, it definitely does not look good. Am I the jerk for canceling a family vacation to the United States? As I felt it wasn't safe to go there based on everything going on in the world right now. Here's what happened. I'm a 39-year-old female and I'm turning 40 later this year. At the beginning of the year, I was planning a vacation in celebration of my birthday for a popular tourist spot in the United States. For reference, we are in another country. Because of some personal circumstances with most of my close friends, they said early enough that they would not be able to make it. They all had very valid reasons and it's been a garbage year so far, so it's all good. But luckily, a few family members who live in a different country than I do, also not in the United States, said that they wanted to come, so I was excited all over again. I booked a vacation house for all of us, but made sure I could cancel with a full refund as stuff in the United States was starting to get really bad. One family member went ahead and booked their flights, which I thought was a bit premature, but I hope for the best. Well, fast forward a couple of months, and things in the US seem very unstable to me, and myself and my partner and another travel mate, all in the same country, decided that we did not feel safe traveling there this year, and possibly for the foreseeable future. So we let my relative know right away, and offer to cover any loss on the ticket they might have, whether refunding it or cover the change fees, whatever cost there was going to be to book someplace else, we would basically work it out. I said I did not want them to be out of anything at all for our decision, and said that we would pick another destination outside of the United States together, which would be somewhere everyone wants to go. Weeks go by and still I have no word from this relative. The others we've informed were disappointed but completely understood, and when we suggested a new destination, this one relative just says in a group chat that they are not interested in joining us regardless of where we choose. And it's like, okay, so I decided to reach out to them in private to discuss it and basically just say if they're upset, I want to make it right. They reply saying that they're there's no point in talking about it, it is what it is, and then they refuse to say any more. So now I'm feeling like a jerk, but at the same time, I cannot in good conscience step foot in that country right now. What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, this is one of those things where they're like, no, it's fine, whatever. Don't say anything else about it, I don't want to talk about it. Like, that kind of passive-aggressive behavior, in my opinion, should not be rewarded. So no, you're not the jerk. You literally did not feel comfortable coming to the United States, and honestly, as someone who lives here, I don't blame you. And you did your best to try and like inform everybody so everybody knows about it. And if this relative wants to be weird about it and be like, oh, it's fine, whatever, I don't want to talk about it, there's nothing to talk about, then fine, there's nothing to talk about. Because if they want to give this weird passive-aggressive attitude, then congratulations, what you're saying is what you mean. Because for me personally, I would not want to put up with that in the slightest. I found out that my boyfriend's cheating on me with his coworker, and I literally found out by going through his phone where I saw he was talking about marriage with this other lady. And now after being with him for over 6 years, I feel like my entire world is crashing down. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my boyfriend and I have been together for 6 years. 6 years of birthdays, holidays, Sunday brunches, and late night phone calls where we fall asleep on the line. He was my first real everything. The kind of love that people write songs about, or so I thought. I don't know what changed really, maybe nothing changed. And maybe I just started to finally notice the little cracks in a foundation I believe to be solid. It started with a feeling, an ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. He was acting different, not colder and not cruel, just different. He was too careful, too distant, too polite in a way that didn't feel like him. My gut kept nudging me to check his phone. And believe me when I say I never had, not once in 6 years. That's how much I trusted him. But that night, something broke inside of me. Or maybe something finally woke up. I waited until he fell asleep next to me, and I unlocked his phone with a code I'd known for years but never used. I opened up his chats with my hands shaking. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. And then I saw her name, his coworker. I knew they were friendly, he'd mentioned her before, but always so casually. I thought nothing of it, but their messages weren't casual. They were long and warm and intimate, flirty and really familiar. And there it was right in the middle of the thread. Them talking about marriage. Marriage of all things. He had never ever brought that up with me. Every time I mentioned it, he would smile and say that he just wasn't ready, that it was something he'd take seriously when the time came. One time he said to me, oh, I'll propose when I'm really sure. And I remember it so clearly because it hurt, but I respected it. But he was sure enough with her though. I didn't wake him up, I just sat there all night staring at those images, trying to understand how someone could hold your heart in their hands for 6 years and then just misplace it like that. When he finally woke up and saw my face, he knew exactly what was going on. He didn't even try to deny it. He just started apologizing over and over, said he'd been close with her for about 4 months, but it didn't mean anything and he didn't want to lose me. He begged me not to walk away. He said he still loved me, that it was just a mistake. But how do you accidentally talk about a future with someone who isn't the person you've been building a life with for 6 years? And what's the worst part about all of this? She has a boyfriend too, a whole other person whose world is probably about to crash, just like mine did. He says he doesn't want to break up, but I mean, how do I stay? How do I stay with someone who made me feel like I was just a placeholder for something better? Because right now I feel incredibly lost. Okay, honestly, there's no way in the world I would ever stay with someone like that. Seriously, this is not some kind of like dramatic moment where it's like, oh, I'll stick with you. Like for me, this would be a deal breaker. This guy literally strung you along for 6 years and started sniffing around towards someone else 4 months ago. Like, I'm pretty sure I can confidently say this guy just doesn't care about you. If he cared about you, he wouldn't be cheating on you. And guess what? That's exactly what he's doing. Him talking about marriage with this other lady, yeah, that's him cheating and saying, no, I don't want to be with you anymore. And by the way, I find it kind of suspicious that he's like, oh, I don't want to lose you. But it's like, dude, if you didn't want to lose her, then why did you entertain this other lady by talking about marriage? Like, dude, you don't know her nearly as well as the person sitting right next to you. So to the original poster, I am so sorry this is happening to you. You do not deserve this. And I really hope things get better for you overall across the board, because your boyfriend right now absolutely sucks and you deserve way better. I got some petty revenge on my vice principal at my school without breaking any rules that he could possibly identify. And I still laugh about the entire situation even to this day. Here's what I did. Too many years ago in my junior year of high school, we had a particularly nasty vice principal. For some reason, he seemed to have it in for me, constantly making critical remarks and often getting me into trouble over petty stuff. I mean, I really hated this guy. My daily walk to school involved taking a shortcut behind a liquor store a couple of blocks from my school, where the loading dock usually had stacks of boxes with empty bottles of booze. So one day I picked one up and I took it to school. During lunch in the cafeteria, I took it out and I pretended to be drunk, you know, to make my friends laugh. Afterwards, I tossed the bottle in the trash and I went to class, unaware that a staff member member, likely a custodian, had come across it and reported it to the vice principal. The following morning, during the pre-class public address, the vice principal gave the school a stern lecture about alcoholism and the consequences of being caught with alcohol or being intoxicated, which included suspension. It was then that I realized I had inadvertently found a way to cause him some grief without actually breaking any rules. So, over the next few days, I started collecting more small, empty liquor bottles and hiding them in various inconspicuous places around the school and the grounds, like the bathrooms, the changing rooms, empty lockers, janitor closets, auditorium stage, and the track and field storage box. I even snuck one into the teacher's lounge. In the days that followed, it was quite something to witness the school administration descend into near panic. At one point, they even initiated a partial school lockdown as teachers and staff tried to identify the drunk student or students. Well, as a 15-year-old, I don't think I'd ever laughed so hard. I'm pretty sure the vice principal heard some rumors and suspected it was me, but he could never prove it, and technically, I hadn't broken any rules that I was aware of. And that really was my first taste of the pleasure of messing with people that I disliked. Oh man, that's really funny. You definitely should not do that if you're listening, by the way. That's a bad idea and you're gonna get in trouble. And I think the original poster got incredibly lucky, like, let's be honest here. But I do find this a funny way to get back at this vice principal, especially one that really seems like they have it out for you, because that really is super obnoxious. Would I be the jerk if I called out my husband's family for intentionally neglecting my husband while he was graduating and earning a degree that he worked incredibly hard for? Here's what's going on. I want to start off by saying that my husband's family is very close. He has a few brothers and they do nearly everything together. My husband left home for his career, and I personally feel as though his family has always resented him for that. Within the last few years, my husband's career brought us closer to both of our families, so we have been able to visit more often. And for us, this means driving a few hours a few weekends a month to spend time with both families. And I can count on one hand the amount of times his family has driven to us. Granted, both of our families live close, so often it's easier for us to come to them, but regardless, we do a lot of driving. Now, on to the issue at hand. My husband has been working very hard at his education. He recently earned a degree and wanted to attend his graduation in another state. We have known about this graduation for months and let each family member know all of the details. His family never confirmed their attendance, and they just danced around the topic for a while. Fast forward to the graduation, and only a few family members attended and hardly even spent time with us while in this other state. His family gave excuses like, oh, we have to work, or they'll be like, oh, it's too far away. However, the weekend right after the graduation, they all got into their cars and drove multiple hours through the night to attend a birthday party for a family member whom, by the way, they haven't even seen in years, and they only got the invitation 2 weeks prior to the event. Well, this is extremely upsetting to me as I sit back and watch my husband fulfill major accomplishments in his life with little to no support from his immediate family. He does so much for them in terms of support and love, but it feels as though it's not reciprocated. I know they love him, but this seems selfish and mean to do that to him. He would never speak on it to them because that's just not how they communicate, but I really want to call them out on it. Ask them why they would do this to him and make him feel as though his accomplishments don't matter, or that a random family member they haven't seen in years deserves their time, but he doesn't. So would I be the jerk if I called them out? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, I can see both sides of this, but in my opinion, it just doesn't seem worth it. These people seem like the kind of people who would literally resent you forever for doing that. And sure, you want to support your husband, but also it's like, well, wait a second. This could end really badly because these people could easily turn this against you forever. So no, you're not the jerk in this situation because his family sounds like absolute garbage human beings. My neighbor ran over the trash he kept piling up at my door, as he would constantly put it there as he didn't want to deal with it in his garage. But I'm honestly so glad that I got some petty revenge on this guy by literally forcing him to pick up all the garbage that he trashed all across the parking lot, simply because he wasn't paying attention. Here's how it went down. Okay, so I live in a small studio apartment, and due to the layout of the building, my whole apartment is directly above the downstairs neighbor's garage. Now, I picked the apartment because I have a large dog with a lot of energy, and I didn't want to have anyone living below me, and trust me, this was a massive mistake. The downstairs neighbors keep finding new ways to disrupt my daily life. In the winter, he would warm up his truck in his garage for 30 minutes with the radio cranked so loud it rattled my dishes in the cabinet. He would then leave his garage open all day, making it harder to hear in my apartment. And he would do the same thing in the summer. He just leaves the door open all day, which is against building rules, by the way, making it almost impossible to cool down my apartment. And on top of that, instead of putting his garbage outside his apartment door, he likes it up on my doorstep because he stores his garbage cans in the garage. At least once a week, I find his garbage blocking my door. I've spoken to him and building management several times, but still, nothing's changed. But finally, this weekend was my breaking point. He had some party on Saturday, and I came home to my door literally being blocked by a half a dozen overflowing bags of cans, as well as some bottles and a lot of garbage. So I took all of them and I stacked them in front of his garage door. And I set them up in such a way where they would tip over when he opened the door, so he would absolutely have to grab them. Well, instead, he must not have noticed and just backed out of his garage and dragged garbage all over the parking lot. I then got to watch him spend a good 30 minutes picking it all up and rebagging it before he could finally leave. So hopefully this means no more garbage piled up at my door, because this guy is truly obnoxious to deal with. Dude, what that guy's doing is like a fire hazard. What is he thinking? You can't block someone's door with garbage. Also, why on earth is he putting it in front of your door? Like, that's really dumb and it feels super targeted. So I think with all things considered, you probably could have gone a lot harder on this guy, but I don't blame you for just doing that, because it seems like he worked out his karma in a roundabout way on his own. My entitled brother is demanding that I give him some money I made off of crypto, after he says that he's the reason I made that money, as he suggested that I invest in that currency from the very beginning. But despite the fact that he literally gave me $0 when it comes to making this investment, he's now saying that I should be kissing his feet and that I am so selfish for not handing over any of my money. Because at this point, I feel very confused and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm looking to get an opinion on this little thing going on with my brother. A few months back, he was begging me into buying a specific cryptocurrency. He has been telling me for years, but it hasn't had any movement, and I have been invested in crypto for a while now. So naturally, I only put my money in places where I believe there is an opportunity to make money. Anyways, I decided to sell another cryptocurrency, and I moved some money to the one that he was telling me to buy. Well, a couple of months have passed, and now that crypto token has gone up around 7 times the amount from the initial point that I bought. My brother and I have always had a good relationship for the most part, and have shared our finances regarding the money that we've made and lost, as well as our portfolio holdings. Now that this crypto has gone up, he acts as if it was his doing that I've made money, and feels entitled to some of the profits that I have made. He says things like, "You should be kissing my feet. You're so selfish," all for me not handing him any money. Mind you, there was zero, and I mean zero, of his money involved into this investment. All of it was mine. He just feels like because he told me at a time before the investment would later go up, that he is the one that told me that this was going to go up, that he somehow feels that I owe him. I need genuine advice from all angles here. I don't want to ruin our relationship, since he is my brother, and I have tried talking to him, but he gets so upset when I mention that I did not make the decision because of him, and that none of his money was involved. So why would he be upset at me that I made money? What should I do? Okay, first off, I want to say your brother is not the smartest person in the world, because if he really thought this was going to go up, then he should have bought some of the crypto himself. Like, seriously, why would he go to you and be like, "Man, you've got to buy into this. You've got to do it. Do it, man. It's going to go up." And then not invest in that same currency that he was like, "Oh, this might go up, so I should get into it." Like, what gives him the right to be like, "Wow, you made money? Congratulations. That's my consulting fee." It's like, what are we talking about? This is crazy in my opinion. So if he really wants a cut out of this and is like, "Oh yeah, I told you about it, so you should give me money," would he then owe you money if that currency went down the drain? Because I'm pretty sure if you went to him and said, "Hey, this currency crashed, you owe me like $7,000, he would run away so quick and be like, "Well, that's your money, man. I don't have anything to do with it. Sorry, bro." So seriously, this is so ridiculous. You do not owe this guy a single penny, and the fact that he's trying to guilt trip you in this scenario, in my opinion, is completely uncalled for. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for getting the highest grade on a test out of everybody in my class? Because right now, apparently, everybody's upset with me, and right now, I'm honestly feeling very confused and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, I go to a high school with an advanced science program for freshmen, and my test grades haven't even been that good since I have never studied before and never needed to before. But fortunately, now I do. So I studied and I managed to get a 97. And apparently, my test grade is the best grade for that test in both sections of that course. Now, I did not know this at the time. So when I said I got a 97 after someone asked me what I got, everybody got really pissed off at me. I also have extreme ADHD and autism, so reading the room is almost impossible for me. At the end of class, I asked one of my friends, let's call him Neil for the sake of the story, wanting to know why everybody's upset. He responded by saying, "You know why everyone's upset," to which I responded and said, "Actually, I don't." Well, since everyone usually gets higher grades than me, I assumed that everyone else got like 100% or something like that. But as we were leaving to go to the gym, a girl who we will call Jill was crying and I didn't know why. I later learned from my best friend, who we will call Sam, that he heard a kid grade in one of the two sections got a 40%. And our theory is that it was this girl that was crying. So Neil went over to try and make her feel better. Now, here's the thing. I've been bullied since I was 7 years old. So I know when people hate me, even though they're not admitting it. And in that moment, I got major feelings of hate from everybody. But in the past, everyone always brags about their grades, even when they know I got a grade that I was not happy with. So am I the jerk for getting a better grade than my classmates? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk. These people suck. You mean to tell me that they're literally trying to make you feel bad all because you did better than them? Like, what is going on right now? How is that your fault? First of all, and I really mean this, anyone who's trying to come at you and be like, wow, I can't believe you got a higher grade than the rest of us, and they for some reason are trying to make you feel bad for getting a good grade, those are not good people. I would even be hesitant to be like, oh yeah, these are my friends, because no friend that I know of would ever treat me like this if I got a better grade than them. And the double standard here is crazy to me. They really will be like, oh yeah, we can brag about our grade, but the second you get a higher grade, that's not allowed. It's like, wait a second, so you can brag about it, but I can't, even though you didn't brag about it in this story? Someone literally just asked you and you're like, yeah, I got a 97. And then they're gonna sit there and almost act like, wow, how could you do that to us? It's like, what are we talking about here? Like, what is going on? So no, of course you're not the jerk. These people suck forever trying to make you feel bad about succeeding. And I know for a fact that if I was in your shoes, I would continue to study hard and do the best that I can. Because these people are simply jealous of the fact that you did better than them on this one test. An entitled manager refuses to return me a product that he sold me that was very defective, as this cost me well over $350. So I decided to get petty by bringing my credit card company into the mix, forcing these people to get off their butts and actually do something about the product that they sold me. And I honestly feel so good at the way that I got back at them. Here's what happened. So this happened mid-2020 during COVID. Now, as a farmer, I can't take a break from anything due to the pandemic, although I still had to deal with local and state laws, such as wearing a mask in stores and keeping 6 feet apart. I was getting my combine harvester cleaned up and practically ready to start harvesting the wheats. Now, the wheat, when planted in the late fall or early winter, are meant to be harvested by the late summer, and the window to harvest them can be mere weeks. Anyways, I noticed the harvester was not starting up, and when I checked, the battery wasn't holding any charge. The trickle charger ran for a few days, and the battery remained well below the minimum required power. I guess the cold winter may have sapped the battery, and it was already old. So I went to a local farming store to get a new battery, and these batteries are $350 for my John Deere harvester. So yeah, they're not cheap. They didn't take the old one for core exchange, as returns were temporarily banned, but I could take it later and get the core fee back. Well, I got it in check, and after a click, I heard nothing. When I checked the battery, it was deader than a doornail. The trickle charger couldn't detect the battery. That seemed to indicate there's a full open, like a misconnection inside, or a few damaged lead plates. So back to the store I go. It should be a simple straight exchange, right? Well, it wasn't. The state of Michigan put in a temporary ban on returns to prevent people from getting too close to employees or sharing COVID-contaminated items. So unfortunately, the only option the store offered was another $350 battery. The store policy had 2 weeks limit to return batteries for exchange and absolutely no refund. With the temporary law, I couldn't exchange it right that time. I asked if they could sell it now and issue a refund on the dead battery later when the restriction is lifted, and they said no. I can't wait until the ban is lifted to exchange the dud, as my unharvested crop would be ruined if the ban remained well into winter. At this point, I involved my credit card company because I was getting screwed out of $350 with a dead battery, no exchange allowed, and no refund later. I ended up in a three-way call for some time with my credit card, bank, and the store. They tried to find compromises like loading me another combine harvester. When I told them what model and size mine is and they looked it up, they only had a tractor that was basically useless, meaning that renting from another place would be the only option. Well, after a heart attack inducing $75 per hour, I told them there was 1,100 acres to be farmed with an average of 30 hours to clear it at best. They then suggested sending some local employees to help hand gather wheat. So I said to them, sir, do you know how much 1,100 acres of wheat is? It's roughly 1 3/4 square miles, and all of those have to be gathered in a few weeks. I would need at a minimum a few hundred people hand cutting all the wheat, thresh them all, and dump the wheat into the trucks. All of your employees might be able to do 1 acre a day, but not finish the full thing in a few weeks. And here's the thing, a few hundred people doing it for a few weeks at standard wage would far exceed the cost of one harvester rental for a few days, and be well within the cost of a used similar size harvester. In fact, a team of just 5 employees doing 1 acre a day would end up finishing in 3 years, with most of the wheat being rejected for being too old, rotten, and moldy. Now, we were still back on the battery. The store store pointed out that state law prohibited return and suggested I wait to return the exchange. But I said I can't wait for when I can exchange the battery, as it may be too late to harvest my wheat. The credit card company reminded them they had an obligation to sell working merchandise, and they need to make an exception to either exchange for another now or allow defective battery return for full refund when returns are allowed. Well, the store said no refund of returned batteries for any reason and refused to allow an exchange due to the law. So these were my options. Either exchange it now, make an exception and allow refund later, pay for a rental combine harvester out of their own pocket, or send a few hundred employees on their dime. And obviously the answer to all of that was no. Ultimately, the credit card company ruled in my favor, and the store was told they can come and pick up the dead battery anytime for the return. In the end, I got a new battery from a different store and have never gone back to the first one ever since. Now, the dead battery and the original old battery have been sitting in my barn for about 4.5 years now. I sent them a reminder when Michigan lifted the return ban and a few months later. And since it is considered abandonment after they ignored my last reminder, maybe I'll send it to someone to try and rebuild it. If it's not rebuildable, I can still take both somewhere and get some money out of it. So if the employee of this store is reading this and remembers this situation, this will be your last chance to come in and pick up your stupid battery. But be sure to bring help and a broom. The battery is around 120 pounds with about 20 pounds of dust all on the top of it. My God, the people who run that store are idiots. Are they really willing to go through all these other measures just to make sure they don't give you a battery instead of just giving you the battery straight up? First off, it would have been so simple to be like, okay, here you go. Like, just say screw the rules and exchange it, and then no one has to know the wiser. Sure, it might be against the law, but at the end of the day, this is something that you guys caused. You sold a defective battery. Like, are you kidding me right now? There's got to be some exception to the rule. And did they really say, oh, you could harvest it by hand? Like, are you kidding me? What is going on right now? That's not gonna work. Like, this guy's a complete idiot. The fact that he would make that kind of assumption and be like, oh yeah, this could happen. You could do this. It's like, no, you can't. You would need a few hundred people just to get that done. Not to mention renting out an entirely new harvester. Like, just give him the battery. It's cheaper that way. So good for you for taking the steps to make sure these people didn't get away with this garbage, because the way they treated you was absolutely insane. Entitled customers are constantly bothering me, as they literally have zero common sense in everything that they do, leaving me wondering how they function on a daily basis. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work in a grocery store, and earlier today I was collecting baskets from the front to take back to the entrance, and you have to go through the produce section to get there. When I'm around 15 feet from the door, this guy who looked to be in his 40s or 50s walks in and immediately turns to the side and drops a handful of garbage into one of the stacks of baskets already by the door, and then makes his way into the store. Now, I have no problem with being confrontational when I need to be, but I hate it, so I wasn't going to say anything, but I was picking up his trash, so I thought to myself, you know what, screw it. I turned around to face the guy who was still pretty close to me, and I say to him, hey sir, don't throw your garbage here, there's a bin right there. And I then point to the garbage bin, which I kid you not is literally 2 steps to the side. Well, he looks taken aback, and then starts nervously laughing and apologizing, saying that he didn't see the bin, but I was too tired to engage any further, so I just said, okay, and I turned around to continue putting the baskets away. But like, seriously, even if you didn't see the bin, why on earth would you just dump your trash into the baskets? Well, not even 2 minutes later, when I was done, this guy was still there looking for some kind of squash, and he sees me walking away and gets my attention to ask me something. He looks at me and says,
I've never eaten this before. How do you cook it?
I looked at him and I said, I don't know, I've never had it either. He then looked at me confused and said,
Oh, what? You don't know how to cook it?
And at this point, I was dumbfounded, so I just said no, and then I started to walk away from him. But as I'm doing so, I hear him turn to another customer and ask them. And it's like, buddy, Google is free. Why don't you use that instead of bothering people? People assuming that me or one of my coworkers know every little detail about different products happens a lot more often than you would think. And it baffles me every time they get this confused look on their face when I tell them I have no idea how to cook or use whatever they're talking about. Because clearly with some people, common sense is just not a strong suit. Okay, if I was in this scenario, I would not even care about the food he was asking about. If he's trying to figure out how to cook some squash, I would be like, yeah, whatever. But it's the fact that he dropped his trash in the baskets I was bringing into the store. Like, that would have driven me crazy. If you don't have some kind of like robot to help you push those carts along, those carts can be very obnoxious to push. So for that guy to walk up and put trash in the basket after you've gone through all the trouble of bringing it back in, like, that is so annoying, and I don't blame you in the slightest for getting frustrated. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for pulling back and planning to cut contact with my friends after they went on vacation to a city without me that I always wanted to go to? Because right now there's a massive divide between between us, and at this point, I don't know what to do. I'm an 18-year-old female, and I have two female best friends who we will call Lindsay and Jessica. Those are not their real names. We've basically been friends since the 5th grade. Now, I'm pretty introverted and hard to trust due to personal stuff, so I don't have a lot of very close friends, meaning that I only have those two. Well, or so I thought. I got my dream vacation for my 18th birthday and spent almost 2 weeks away during the summer holidays. My friend knew this loosely, and at some point during the holidays, Lindsay asked me when I was going to be away. Well, a few weeks later, my mother asked me if I was joining Lindsay and Jessica on their vacation. Now, I didn't know anything about that, but apparently they were going to a city that I love, and they knew that I love that city. I confronted Lindsay about it, and she said she didn't bother since I would be away on my dream vacation, and I would not have come along even if they asked me. I was mostly upset that they didn't communicate it to me at all, and it felt like they were going behind my back. A few days later, we wanted to take the same subway to a school event, and I missed the train. And again, they didn't even think to wait for me at all, and they walked from the subway to the event without thinking about me. They do this a lot, by the way. I tend to wait for them for stuff and make an effort to spend time with them, but they rarely ask me to meet up with the two of them. They meet up to go shopping together all the time. I see their snaps. During COVID, Lindsay and I met up outside, and we walked to Jessica's house to meet up with her too. And later, I met up with Jessica to walk to Lindsay's house and meet up with her too, because I thought it was a cute thing to do amongst friends. But they never bothered to do the same with me. So yes, I was hurt. I found out that almost all my friends were going to that city together. I was really hurt, so I decided to not talk to the two of them for a while, and they didn't even make any effort to reach out to me at all for almost 4 weeks. During that time, I still had contact with them, as we did share classes and have extracurricular activities together, so I will admit that I was a bit of a jerk to them, and I was pretty passive-aggressive. After 4 weeks, I reached out to Lindsay because I couldn't bear it anymore, and she said they felt I was being unreasonable and cruel. Now, I apologized to make the peace, but she didn't really do that. When I went to talk to Jessica, she asked me, "Are we talking to each other again?" And she said this in a really mean tone of voice. I was in a right mind to tell her no and just leave, but I didn't. Later, she said I was overreacting and being childish, so she didn't see a point in talking to me. But now, the friendship is so uneasy at best, and I don't think I can forgive them and keep up the friendship after we graduate. I've also been a bit colder to the both of them. For context, I'm Arrow Ace, and I don't have a dividing line between platonic and romantic feelings, so my hurt might be overreacting somewhat, and I understand that, but it doesn't change how I feel. So am I the jerk for the way things have gone down? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, it doesn't sound like you, Lindsay, and Jessica are good friends at all, because based on what you're describing, it sounds like you're the third wheel. And sure, you probably don't want to hear that, but it just kind of seems that way. And that's really not fair to you. Like, you really do deserve friends who want you around and who value your time and attention. So the fact that these people are just like, "Oh yeah, whatever, you're overreacting all because we excluded you again." It's like, that's really what's going on here. They're excluding you and they're not involving you in stuff that they're doing. So no, I don't blame you if you do want to cut them off as friends, but I think there might be some kind of way of making things right if they are reasonable human beings in general. So hopefully things do work out, but if they don't, I hope you find better friends than this, because what you described honestly sounds awful. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she is insane for not teaching her daughter English, because she claims that they won't be needing it as they plan on moving back to Sweden at some point in the future? But right now, my parents are saying that I went a little bit too far and that I might be the jerk in this situation. So at this point, I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 20-year-old female and my family is originally from Sweden. My sister, who we will call Kristen, is 30 years old and was born in Sweden and was raised speaking Swedish and English. She and my parents came to the United States when she was 10 years old, and I was born not long afterwards. I was raised only speaking English. My parents did not bother having me learn Swedish because it isn't a widely spoken language where we live. And in fact, when I was little, they had a rule that Kristen could only talk to me in English. And they did this because they didn't want to hinder me being able to communicate with my peers. Now, I visited Sweden maybe twice when I was really little, and I don't have any recollections. Kristen, however, has a lot of fond memories from her childhood. Since she's moved out, she has regularly visited Sweden. She has been married to her husband, who we will call Eric, for about 3 years now, and Eric is also from Sweden and came to visit the United States in his early 20s. Eric was also raised speaking Swedish and English, but is more comfortable talking in Swedish. They also have a daughter that we will call Elsa, who is 18 months old and is learning to talk. When they came over for Christmas dinner, I tried to talk to Elsa, but Kristen told me that I can only talk to Elsa in Swedish but not English. Now, I thought she was raising Elsa to speak both Swedish and English, but she told me that they are not going to bother teaching her English. Well, I asked why, and Kristen told me that they want Elsa to be connected to her heritage, and also because they plan plan on eventually moving back to Sweden. I asked if she had any idea as to when they will be moving, and she said it could be 1 year or even 10 years. I then told Kristen that she is doing Elsa a big disservice by not teaching her English, but she told me that it won't be an issue, as she'll apparently learn it when she goes to kindergarten. I then said that I can understand wanting Elsa to know Swedish, and if they had any immediate plans to move back to Sweden, then I could understand prioritizing Swedish over English. But since they don't have any immediate plans to move back there, she should learn both languages now so she can communicate with her English-speaking relatives in the United States, as well as her peers and teachers when she goes to school. I said that not teaching Elsa any English at all was insane. Well, when I said that, Kristen got mad at me and told me that I'm being xenophobic. I told her this would not be an issue if Elsa speaks English too, but because almost nobody around here speaks Swedish, she is hindering her daughter. She said that it's possible that by the time Elsa is ready to start school, they might have moved back to Sweden. Now, my parents are mostly on my side, but say that they understand why she's doing this, and that I was being harsh by saying that it was insane for not teaching her English, and that I should be more understanding. But I feel it's equally harsh for her to say that I'm xenophobic. I think it's great to be multilingual, but one needs to be able to communicate with the majority of the people where they live. But now I'm starting to feel like maybe I was too harsh, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first off, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because what your sister is doing really is stupid. Like, why would you not actively try to teach your kid English? She's gonna go into kindergarten speaking Swedish, and then nobody's gonna be able to talk to her. And granted, there's probably a chance she'll learn just by being in an English-speaking country, so there might be some kind of like exposure aspect to this where it's like, okay, she learned it just by living in the culture, but that is not a risk I would be willing to take. But they're also operating under the assumption that they might move back to Sweden in the future, maybe. And they're not even giving any kind of like clear timeline as to when that might happen if they want to do that. So why not just teach both languages? It wouldn't be that hard to have like both Swedish and English being taught in the house. So yeah, I'm 100% on your side, and I think your parents are idiots for trying to be like, wow, you need to be more understanding, because not teaching their kid English is really going to be giving her a disservice. And when things go poorly with this, those parents will have no one else to blame except for themselves. My entitled family demands that I hand over my lottery ticket winnings after I win $25,000 during our family's Christmas white elephant gift exchange. But after the way they treated me and the way they freaked out on me and called me selfish for not giving them more money, I decided to keep everything to myself. And now I'm worried that I may have destroyed my relationship with my family, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, the recent family Christmas party was at my house this year, and about 25 people showed up. The traditional game this year was White Elephant. My family plays the dice version with some house rules for context. Anyone who doesn't have a gift by the end of the game will receive $10 as a gift. Also, trading gifts is allowed, only with a $10 consolation gift. The game had a total of about 40 gifts. I ended the game with 4 gifts, and 4 family members ended with none. My gifts were a space heater, windshield wipers, a 20-pound gummy bear, and a $50 Starbucks gift card. Of the 4 people without a gift, 3 of them got rejected, meaning only 1 trade was made. My cousin ended with $50 worth of lottery tickets, but assumed they'd be worth nothing, and I don't go to Starbucks. Now, we couldn't trade because of the rules above, and argued that the gift cards and the lottery tickets had a numerical value, just like the $10 gifts, so they should be tradable. Well, the family agreed and more gift cards were exchanged, and this will be important later on. Trading ended and people began using their gifts, so I went to put my gifts back in my room, and I got a quarter to scratch my 5 $10 tickets. Now, I thought to myself, I'm not expecting to win anything, but the second I was about to move on to the 3rd ticket, I did a double take and I realized I won $25,000. For a second, I thought they were fake, but my grandma who bought them wouldn't do that. I sat in my room for a bit and decided to keep quiet about it, knowing how some family members might react. I thought about how I would tell them throughout the party, and when they asked about it, I said no and that I threw them out. But unfortunately, this is just the beginning of my problems, as my family turns on me in a way that I honestly never expected. The next day on the 29th, I asked my mom to come with me to cash in the lottery ticket. Now, she was surprised, of course, and told me that I needed to go to the casino, with my brother thinking this was funny and deciding to tag along. He proceeded to post snaps of me being handed $100 bills in the casino, although I told him not to say anything because of the commotion it would cause, and that I'd share some with the family. He posted it anyways. Well, an hour passes, and I'm pulled into a group chat of people from the party, plus some family members that couldn't make it. I said that I'd give everyone who came to the party $250, but they thought I was being selfish. For about 30 people that attended, that's $7,500 right there. I felt that was fair, but family members who were not even there argued that that they shouldn't be excluded, and others argue that $250 isn't enough if I have $25,000. After about 30 minutes of arguing, I was pissed and I gave up negotiating. I told everyone that I'm sorry that they're not happy with their white elephant gifts this year, and that the rule was that all trades are final. So in the end, I kept all the money. I put $15,000 in my savings, and then I invested the rest. But now, many of my family members are still upset with me, even going as far as calling me cruel and heartless. But I told them that if $250 isn't enough from a $100 limit, then they are the selfish ones and not me. So seriously, am I at fault here, or am I the jerk for the way things went down? Because right now, I feel like there's a giant rift in my family. Okay, I've said this once and I'll say it 100 times on this channel. Do not tell people if you win the lottery. This is a prime example. First of all, it's only $25,000. And all these people are suddenly rolling up and being like, well, where's my share of it? $250 is not nearly enough. Like at that point, I don't blame you for taking all the money and being like, screw you guys, I'm out of here, I'm not doing this. Because this is how people act when money is involved. They change, they become vindictive, especially when it comes to family. Like, my God, your first mistake was telling anybody about this. You should have kept a lid on it and gone yourself. And for context, the original poster is 22 years old, so I'm willing to bet that they could have taken care of this by themselves. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for taking all the money, especially with the way that everybody acted, but I do think you're crazy for ever negotiating with anyone. Because if I was in your shoes, I would have quietly taken that money and used it for myself. I would not have gone to the rest of the family and been like, okay, everybody's getting a little bit of it, let's figure this out. Because at the end of the day, this is your money, and no one, and I mean no one in your extended family, has any say on what you can and cannot do with it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My ex said that I'll never make more than minimum wage and put me down in a way that was truly humiliating. So I decided to get some revenge by working harder than I've ever worked in my life to obtain a job that would not only make more money than him, but would also outpace any promotion he could possibly get. And I'm honestly so glad when we finally got a divorce, because that guy was absolutely unbearable. Here's what happened. Many years ago, after the birth of my oldest son, I desperately needed a job. I was scouring through the job section of as many newspapers as I could get my hands on. The pickings were slim, as my highest qualification was graduating high school. I had to ignore minimum wage jobs because it would cost more than it paid. Then my ex said the magic words, "Stop being so picky, as you're never going to earn more than minimum wage." Well, I saw red. Then I found the ad. They advertised free training to become a software engineer, obtain a professional certification, and get you a job afterwards. The only requirement was a high school diploma with a passing math grade. At first, I was very wary, because it definitely felt like it was too good to be true and possibly a scam, but I had nothing to lose by just checking it out. So off I went. The first day of the acceptance process was grueling. Multiple timed aptitude tests that took hours to complete. The ones who passed were invited to a second round of testing. This time, there were a lot less people. Out of the 30 people from the first day, only 2 of us were accepted at the end. And that's when I come to find out that it wasn't a scam. The reason why it was free was because the employers would pay for the training, and I was thrilled. But then this was followed by the most intensive 4 months of my life. But I was determined to prove my ex wrong. To give you a breakdown, I had 8 hours in class every single weekday, and another 6 for homework and studying. Then I would go from studying and doing a weekend project for another 20 hours over the weekend. I only got about 6 hours of sleep each night. Thankfully, my son was sleeping through the night by then. And eventually I made it. I did really well in my final exams too. The job search was short and sweet, and since it was only 3 years before Y2K, and even entry-level engineers were earning good salaries. And to top it all off, when I got my offer, my salary was more than my ex got. Internally, I was elated, and I thought, okay, well, take that, you insufferable jerk, even though I didn't say it out loud. As time went by, I kept getting really good raises and promotions, and my ex had finally had enough of the humiliation and eventually wanted a divorce. And trust me, I jumped at the chance to escape him. Wow, good for you for stepping up and getting this done. This could have gone one of 2 ways. Either you would figure your life out, or you would burn out and go back to something minimum wage. But you stuck through it just to spite your ex, and I love that kind of like petty revenge. Because this guy's way of treating you, in my opinion, was completely uncalled for. Am I the jerk for not being reliable enough for my sister to use me as a backup babysitter for her kids during an emergency? Because right now my entire family has turned on me and is actively criticizing my life. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so right now I feel bad about this situation while also feeling resentment towards my family. My sister lives about 20 minutes away from me near our parents. There was a family emergency where she needed to meet meet my parents at the hospital, and taking her kids wasn't an option. She called me up at 6:45 p.m. on her way to my apartment to tell me that she needed to drop off the kids quickly and then run. I tried to tell her that I was not in the right condition for that, but she told me that it was an emergency and she had no other option. I begged her to call her mother-in-law, but she said that wouldn't work. When she showed up, she stepped inside my apartment to hand off her kids. And like I told her, I wasn't in a good condition for this. My friend and I had celebrated her new job. My sister was shocked and disgusted and then dragged her kids off, but not before telling me what a pathetic loser she thinks I am. She ended up texting me a novel about how disappointed she is, how upsetting it is for her kids to have walked into my apartment reeking of the herb, how I'm 27 years old and should be over this phase of my life and all this other garbage. She ripped into me for still living with 5 roommates, not having a car, and all this other stuff. It was deeply hurtful, and I just apologized for not being able to help her and the kids. Of course, I had no idea there could be an emergency like this, but you never know. That's why it's an emergency. And yes, I live with 5 people, but they are all my friends and we need each other to afford living here. Also, I don't have a car because I can't drive. And on top of that, the herb is legal here, and it's not a crime to smoke once in a while. My sister said that she was so disgusted with me that she brought my parents into it, and now they've all banded together to let me know what a piece of garbage I am for not living up to anyone's expectations. I do feel a bit defensive because I had no way of knowing this would happen. So I guess my question boils down to this. Am I the jerk for not being ready for an emergency at my big age of 27? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, what in the world is wrong with people? First off, no, this is not your fault, and no, you're not the jerk. Anyone taking your sister's side is so irrational. This went from your sister having an emergency all the way to your family basically like criticizing your living standards. Like seriously, what's happening here? It is so unfair for them to be like, wow, you're 27 years old. It's time for you to grow up. And it's like, okay, that's rich, coming from the person who literally is not planning ahead and is instead trying to drop off her kids and run off to whatever's going on. And sure, I get it, there's a family emergency, but does your sister seriously expect everybody to drop what they're doing and be like, oh yeah, we'll take care of your kids all of a sudden out of nowhere? Under different circumstances, this could work out. But the moment you said, hey, I can't take care of your kids right now, should have been the very second that she steps up and says, okay, let me ask someone else. Like it really is that simple. They owe you a massive apology for the way they treated you. And in my opinion, it almost seems like she finally found an excuse to openly criticize you. She comes by and tries to drop her kids off, and the second you say no, which honestly anybody would say no, she can now be like, wow, they are so irresponsible. Look at the way they're living their lives. I can't believe them. So with all that being said, no, you're not the jerk, because your sister is a complete idiot. And if she had any brains in her head, she would have gone to someone immediately instead of trying to drag you and your life. My entitled Karen of a coworker reported me to my supervisor for not doing my job exactly as described. But despite the fact that I tried to do things in the most optimized way, my coworker still reported me, ignoring the fact that I was split between 2 buildings and working incredibly hard. Here's what happened. Okay, so I really want to start off by saying I hate entitled people. I get that some people have bad days and end up snapping at those around them, but sometimes it just goes way too far, and this was one of those times. So buckle up because this really is a long one. Now to try and set the scene, here is some important context. I'm a 3rd shift security guard working at a site with 2 buildings owned by the client, and they are about 5 minutes apart, if that. The client is a storage and shipping company that rents out space in these buildings to a big name luxury goods brand. Shifts for guards are set up so that 1 guard is in each building per shift, with a mobile guard that floats between buildings as necessary to cover breaks, man the checkpoints while the post guard does their duties, and clear out truckers from the parking lots when they're not supposed to be there. The mobile guards are expected to use their own vehicles and don't get compensated for gas or wear, and this will be an important detail later on. Now with all that in mind, here's the story. I've been working at this site for almost 2 years now, and in that time, I've gotten pretty familiar with the job and what can and can't be done, especially on the 3rd shift. Things pick up around Thanksgiving to Christmas due to an increase of customer demand, so seasonal workers are hired by the client to help meet the demand, and as a result, extra guards are posted to the site to assist with medical emergencies, thievery, or anything else that might come up. This allows for 2 guards per building, often with a mobile still going between them. During my first year of employment here, one of those guards ended up staying on after the season was over, and that person is a lady that we will call Patricia, who is the entitled Karen of this story. Patricia is not her real name. Now she is a sociable woman, she's friendly and outgoing, but she is a bit blunt. She makes jokes about everyone, even herself, and pokes fun at everything with a sarcastic type of humor that I don't really mind as it is fairly similar to my own. She's also very touchy and likes to give hugs. hugs. Again, I don't really mind because while I don't really like being touched, she is generally pretty nice, and she can actually get me to open up a little at work. However, here's where the entitlement comes in. Over the course of working with her, I've learned that she can be a bit of a drama queen, and I mean that in every possible way. She regularly complains about the other guards, and probably complains about me to them. She's constantly complaining about her living situation, and that list just goes on and on. It all came to a head for me last night when I finally realized just how deep the entitlement ran, because the way she acted truly blew my mind, and the resulting damage made my life a living nightmare. Now remember how I said mobile guards don't get compensated for using their own vehicle? Well, I genuinely can't afford to not get compensated for the use of my own vehicle, and when I have to be the mobile guard, I really try to minimize my travel time. Instead of changing buildings every hour like most guards do on mobile duty, I only change buildings every 2 or 3 hours. And last night, I did something I've never done before. I split my knife with one half at one building and the other half at the second. Now this was my reasoning. Due to the way the clients scheduled their workers, the first building is empty for the entirety of our shift, and no one comes in until an hour after our shift ends. However, in the second building, workers end their shift around halfway through our shift, with the next shift coming in at the end of our shift. Because of this, I figured I could spend half the night at the first building to allow that guard to complete all their necessary jobs, then switch to the second building to help get the workers out at the end of their shift, as well as helping get the next shift in later. And this was all under the understanding that either guard could radio if they needed assistance while I was at the other building. And that's the entire point of being the mobile guard. And by the way, that is also why we have radios. Well, care to guess who was in the second building? Because if you guessed Patricia, you would be correct. To be entirely fair here, I did make a pretty major mistake. I failed to communicate my intentions beforehand. But that, however, is the end of my leniency towards Patricia in this matter, because this is what happened. About an hour into the shift, she calls over the radio asking for an estimated time of arrival on when I would be changing buildings. I then let her know that I'd be over there halfway through the shift unless she needs me before that, and even asked her outright if she needed me right then and there. Well, she sounded a little annoyed when she said, "No, I just wanted some clarification and communication." And I really thought that was the end of it, but trust me, it gets way worse. Not once in the next 3 hours did she radio for assistance. Not one single time. When I finally made it to her building, I went in and greeted her, more cheerful than usual by the way, because I vastly preferred her company to that of the other guard on duty at the time. But then she snapped at me and said, "How could you think it's acceptable to be in the empty building all night?" While also saying, I had to get someone to cover so I could go to the bathroom and to get some ice. Well, at that point, my mood went from 100 to 0 just like that. So I coldly reminded her that I told her to call if she needed anything, and that was the entire point of the mobile guard. I even explained that I had intentionally split my night to be in her building to help get workers out at the end of their shift, as well as helping get them in for their morning shift. But she was not having any of it. She pointedly ignored me the rest of the night, and not 5 minutes after I clocked out, I got an email sent out by our supervisor to all guards stating the following: the mobile officer should not spend the majority of their time in an empty building, as apparently it was unfair to the officer in the full building. So yeah, Patricia complained about my one mistake to the supervisor because she was so entitled she couldn't get on the radio for 5 seconds to ask for assistance even once. Now, I could say a lot of mean things about Patricia, but she truly was an absolute Karen. First of all, I absolutely would be demanding compensation for using my vehicle to go from building to building. There's no way I would be okay with that, and they better give me a company vehicle or something, because that's absolutely not going to happen for my car in the slightest. But also, I really think you did the job wrong and you're somehow blaming Patricia for being upset about it. Because according to the job description that you laid out, you're supposed to go from building to building every hour. Like that is how it's supposed to work, and you didn't do that. Instead, you kind of adapted it in a way where yes, you really did camp in one building and then went to the other one at the end of your shift. And sure, I totally understand. Patricia really could have called and been like, "Hey, come over here real quick, I need to use the bathroom," or something like that. But based on the way she was trained and everybody else in the building and the company was trained for this specific job, she shouldn't have to do that. She should be able to expect that, oh, in about 45 minutes to an hour, my coworker will be coming by and then I can use the bathroom. Like, I understand that you had other things that you needed to do, but the point of being a mobile unit is to be mobile. So in my opinion, Patricia wasn't being entitled for expecting support. It's literally established in the routine, and you changed that just to make your life a little bit better. So in my opinion, I think the original poster is absolutely being a jerk. And if I was in your coworker's shoes, I absolutely would report you as well. Like, what you're doing is so weird and unacceptable. But truly, that is just my opinion. What do you think though? Do you think the original poster has a point? Or do you think the coworker had every right to report this person? Leave a comment down below. below. We would love to read what you have to say. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for leaving a negative Google review and hurting my doctor's feelings after her staff literally ruined my experience with that office pretty much forever? Here's what happened. Okay, for the past 10 years, my family and I have been patients of a wonderful doctor. She's been there for us through so much, and I can't speak highly enough of the care that she's provided. When I lost my mom unexpectedly, she helped me navigate a tough time by assisting with FMLA paperwork, as well as short-term disability insurance and adjusting my depression medication. And I am deeply grateful for the support she gave me during that difficult time. Recently, however, an issue with her office has left me questioning if I handled the situation poorly or if the office could have done more to help me. Here's what happened. A few months ago, after everything was sorted with my FMLA paperwork and insurance, I scheduled a wellness check for my 11-year-old daughter. About 2 weeks before the appointment, I got a call from the office's billing representative. She informed me that a bill for my daughter's visit over a year ago hadn't been paid because our insurance company had mysteriously changed my daughter's date of birth in their system. The claim had been rejected, and now it was apparently too late to be rebilled. The billing lady demanded that I pay $350 out of pocket or they would cancel my daughter's appointment. Now, I pay $900 a month for my family's insurance premium, so I expect them to pay for what they owe when we get sick. My husband and I both work in public education, so we don't make a lot of money. So I told her I would try to fix it with my insurance, but thankfully the insurance company corrected the error and assured me that the doctor's office could rebill the claim and they would process it. Well, I communicated this to billing, but she flat out refused to rebill it. This meant I had to go through a time-consuming process with the insurance company myself just to get them to pay directly. And if you've ever dealt with an insurance company before, then you know they don't do anything fast or make it easy for you. Throughout this, I kept the office updated. However, after one of my calls with the billing representative, I found myself locked out of the patient portal. I couldn't access it for days and assumed there were technical issues. After 5 days, I called to find out what was going on, and I was told I'd been locked out because I owed them money. This happened immediately after my last conversation with the billing representative, which made me feel like it was a deliberate action. I've always been on top of my bills and had a spotless payment history with them for 10 years. This situation wasn't my fault, and yet I still felt penalized. When I called the office manager to address it, she didn't return my call for 2 weeks. At this point, I was so frustrated that I wrote a Google review about my experience. I made it clear that my issue wasn't with the doctor, but with the office staff and their handling of the situation. When the office manager finally called me back, she said my doctor was deeply offended by the review and wished that I had spoken to her first. And seriously, I was surprised by this reaction. I couldn't have spoken to her because I was locked out of the portal, and I honestly didn't feel like it wasn't her responsibility to deal with the administrative issues. I believe her staff should handle those problems more professionally. I also mentioned to the office manager that there were several complaints about the office staff on Google as well. She then said they were all disgruntled past employees. And it's like, really? All of them? That's quite a coincidence, don't you think? When they finally opened the patient portal, I messaged my doctor an apology for offending her with my Google review, but I also explained my side of the story. Well, she didn't seem to have a lot of compassion for my side of the story, and it honestly blew my mind. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. Holy crap, this is so upsetting. Here you have a doctor you've seen for 10 years, someone that you have a solid relationship with, who clearly knows your family history and your life and has helped you through a lot of different things. But then in comes her stupid staff to ruin the entire experience. As someone who's worked in the medical field, let me tell you something. The way the billing manager and office manager handled this situation is completely unacceptable. They are completely incompetent and they should have handled this way better. From the billing situation to the office manager being like, wow, the doctor's really offended right now. And it's like, good, I hope she's offended and you guys get fired. You blocked the original poster from having any communication with the doctor. You demanded that they give you money while also refusing to rebill it, which by the way is incredibly easy. And then you try to sit there and take the high ground and be like, wow, the doctor's really upset about this. Yeah, no kidding. You guys suck at your job and it's your fault. So no, you're not the jerk for leaving a bad review, but if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely start looking for another doctor, because clearly this doctor you've known for 10 years has let her standards fall completely with her staff. And that, in my opinion, is not your fault in the slightest. My toxic, entitled father mistreated me my entire childhood, as he constantly tried to force me to conform to a gender identity that I did not agree with. But now that I'm an adult, I decided to get some revenge by not only embarrassing him in front of the entire family, but also exposing him to the family that he has never been a good father to me. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I'll say it bluntly. My genetic father is a horrible human being. By this point, I've completely cut contact with him. However, this happened on the very last time I ever had to see him. My mother left him when I was about 13 years old. However, due to his lies and manipulation, the court system failed me, and I was still forced to see him. So the mistreatment he inflicted continued until I was 18 years old, and only got worse after the divorce because he knew that hurting me meant that it would hurt my mother. He is the absolute definition of trash, and my rather unique situation was only fuel on this dumpster fire. I won't go into too great of detail about his depravity, but I will simplify it and say that if you weren't a straight white man or a straight woman in a prairie dress, then you were going straight to Hades in his eyes and didn't deserve the time of day. And as for me, being born as both genders, it was a living nightmare. Now, having both genders basically means I have incompatible traits from both sides, and I actually didn't even find this out until I was almost an adult. However, I had a lot of health problems because of it, and due to looking highly androgynous growing up, I was called a freak. At birth, I was signed off as a girl, and when I began having some unique changes with puberty, it was drilled into me that I was basically just an ugly woman who didn't deserve anything because I didn't meet my father's standards. The discussion about my gender and who I am is a very long story. However, as an adult, I made the choice for both my physical and mental health to become fully male. Due to my father, there were only two people in my entire family who knew about this: my mother and my grandmother on my father's side. My mother's an amazing person and was extremely happy for me, and my grandmother was the sweetest woman you'd ever meet. Picture the stereotypical grandma who bakes cookies in children's books, and that honestly was her. The woman would give her last penny just to make sure you felt happy and safe. She was delighted to hear that I was starting to find who I was. My grandfather passed away shortly after I was born. However, my grandmother started dating again many years later, and when I was 18, I got an invitation to her wedding. She was in her 70s and acting like a teenager with her new fiance, and it was amazing to see her so happy. And of course, I wanted to go, but there was just one problem. My father would also be there too. At this point, I was already on hormone therapy for my treatments. I had facial hair, a flat chest. I didn't even look like my old self anymore, and I didn't want to think of the nightmare that would rain down from my father seeing me like this. But then I stopped myself in that moment, and I thought about it a little bit more. And after a bit of contemplating, I figured this would be perfect. He had always lied to family about what happened, painting himself as this loving father. So what kind of perfect dad wouldn't be happy for their son, right? Well, out of absolute spite, I went to a thrift store, got myself a classy black and purple gown, got some makeup, a pair of heels, and went to the wedding in full drag. My mother questioned as to why I was dressing up like a woman for this instead of just grabbing my suit, and when I told her what I was going to do, she broke out into full belly laughter and began insisting on helping me get ready to go. The wedding was lovely, everyone was smiling, and my grandmother was glowing the entire time, and I actually didn't see my father for the bulk of the reception. We had a big family, so I wasn't really surprised. However, at the end, as everyone was talking and getting cake, that's when my father spotted me. By this point, most of the family didn't even recognize me. However, when I was standing next to my mother, my father must have put the pieces together and started walking over. I then told my mother to go and be with my grandmother, and I was now left alone with my awful father in a crowd of people. He came right up to me and asked me what I was doing, and I just shrugged and continued people watching. He then leaned against the wall with me, and just as I expected, he began lecturing me. He pointed to my grandmother and now step-grandfather, and he said, "You see that? Make sure you get yourself a good man like that. Someone who makes enough to support you so you can stay home." I then looked over at him, and in my now deep voice, I said to him very simply, "Yeah, that would be great if I didn't have a girlfriend." Now, I wish I had a camera right at that moment just to capture the image of his eyes growing wide as he choked on his own words, and for the first time ever, he was left speechless. I could see him getting angry and trying hard to contain it, but I didn't care. I just casually waved over my grandmother. She came over smiling, and for the first time, I spoke openly with her in front of my father, telling her about my girlfriend and my journey into becoming a man. She was thrilled for me having a girlfriend, giving me a huge hug and telling me to invite her so that she could celebrate with everybody. And so that's exactly what I did. Now my father remained speechless, just staring at me as his face turned red, not daring to say a single thing in front of his own mother and their entire family. This was the one time that he was forced to be a decent human being to his child, because he was surrounded by everyone he had lied to, and he was stuck between the lie and the man he really was. After a while of him just stewing in his very clear anger, he turned around and left without a single word, walking out on his own mother's wedding. My grandmother had me and my mother sit with her and her now husband at a table, and we all laughed and ate, enjoying our time together and making memories without him. My step-grandfather asked why my father left so suddenly, and asked asked if everything was all right, and when I told him what happened, he looked at me with a sigh and said, "This is supposed to be a joining of families together. If he doesn't want to be part of that family, then so be it." And with all things considered, I honestly couldn't agree more. Okay, I love everything about this. This is like the perfect way of putting this guy in his place. You not only showed that this guy has no hold over your life, but he also can no longer lie about him being a good father to you, because he absolutely mistreated you, and I'm so sorry that you dealt with that. But also, I'm so glad that you have supportive family members who love you for exactly how you are, and the fact that you were finally able to put this guy in his place, especially in front of his family, in my opinion, was something this guy absolutely deserved. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by calling someone the wrong name for several years at my job as a hostess. And now, after all these years later, I'm finally corrected and I feel like a complete idiot. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. In 2019, I worked as a hostess at a restaurant. Now, I actually applied to be a fry cook, but they recently had their only hostess quit and decided my 20-year-old lady self would be better as a host. They were kind of misogynistic like that and never really hired women to be fry cooks anyways, but I accepted the hostess role because social anxiety or not, I needed the money. This restaurant was also really popular as a takeout spot though, and as a hostess, one of my main duties was handling phone orders and walk-in to-go orders. Now, we had a lunch special that was a really good deal, so good that some people came in multiple times a week to order it to go. We took down names for takeout orders instead of giving numbers, so I really got to remember some names, and John was one of these regulars. He was older than me, probably mid-30s, and always looked kind of sad and nervous, but he was cute to me and I remember him well. One time, he came in a couple of hours after the lunch special was over, and like I said, the guy always seemed skittish and sad in the first place. Now, he seemed disappointed but was understanding and willing to order it at full price. But I felt bad, and I told him this one time only I could give him 10% off because I wanted to cheer him up. Now, it's still not as good of a deal as the lunch special, but it was something. He then actually smiled, thanked me, and looked happy for once. He hardly ever missed the lunch special after that, and thankfully when he did, he didn't expect the discount. Whenever he came in, I would always start typing his name and punching in his order, and just waiting to confirm that he wanted the usual before sending it to the kitchen and taking his payment. When it came out, I would call "Order for John," and he would come and grab it and thank me smiling. COVID happened and we didn't see a lot of our regulars like we used to. We were takeout only at that point, but even some of our takeout regulars weren't going out like that. And with everybody wearing a mask, it was harder to recognize regulars. But even then, I still tried. I kept working, but then I moved away for a while and I met a guy. And after a few months, I ended up moving back and I brought the guy with me. When I came back to my restaurant, I was unsure of my knowledge of the regulars. It had been too long, and plus I was in love now, so it kind of clouded my brain. So when I saw people that I had probably seen 100 times before, I still asked them to confirm everything. That is, except for John. I kept pre-typing everything in for him and continuing my process the same as before, and he would still smile at me as I passed the order over after calling out "Order for John." I felt like maybe I hadn't completely lost my knack since I still remember John. Now, I stayed at that restaurant long enough to where eventually they made me a manager. I was in the kitchen 90% of the time actually doing stuff like working the fryer, which is something I applied for all those years ago. One day we were short a hostess and I, as the manager, had to fill in. I was feeling especially self-conscious, doubting myself as I wasn't front of house as often as I was before. So when he came in, I did my usual and I started pre-typing everything. He came to the host stand smiling. He mentioned not seeing me in a while, and after I explained, he congratulated me on the promotion, saying that I deserved it. So I thanked him, I read back his regular order, and I asked to confirm by saying, "And it's for John, right?" Well, he was still smiling when he said to me, "Actually, my name is Chris, but I know sometimes I look like John." And it's like, what in the world is going on? I've been calling him the wrong name for years. Who is John? He knows John? Was he trolling me the entire time? I 100% knew it was the same guy I'd been calling John for years. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. Thankfully, though, I moved away shortly afterwards. And it's for several reasons, not just because I was terribly embarrassed. And thankfully, I never saw this guy ever again, because this is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Oh my gosh, I would die from embarrassment. There's no way I would ever live that down. Thank God you moved away. Like, seriously, that is so embarrassing. But honestly, with all things considered, I don't blame you for getting someone's name wrong. This guy introduced himself as John all those years ago, and now he's trying to be like, actually my name's Chris. And it's like, no, it's not John, your name's John, don't lie to me. And sure, this is super embarrassing, but also it's incredibly funny. Am I the jerk for offering offering to get my sister groceries from Dollar Tree instead of outright giving her cash. Because right now she's saying she would rather go hungry than eat from Dollar Tree. And at this point, I'm not sure if I offended her or if I was in the right. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my sister is broke and has no groceries. And this is also all according to her. I have not personally seen her kitchen, so I have no idea. And right now, she's asking me for $40 that she can borrow. And by the way, she never pays anyone back for anything. And she wants that money so she can get some groceries. I told her I'm really strapped for cash right now myself, as I just had to pay rent, the bills, and take my dog to the emergency vet, which in itself costs about $487. And I don't get paid again until next week. As a side note, she does not work due to severe health issues. Her husband does work, but doesn't make that much, and yet somehow makes too much money to qualify for food stamps. So what I told my sister was that I could go to Dollar Tree and get some stuff to help them get by until he gets paid. Well, she got really upset and offended. She then said to me, no thanks, I'm good. I then told her I watch a lady on TikTok who makes really good looking stuff with Dollar Tree items, but she still said no, especially because their meat looks nasty and her main meal that she eats daily is meatloaf, which I really can't afford to get right now because where we live, ground beef is so expensive. At this point, I told her, well, beggars can't be choosers. Those are her options. It's either that or go hungry. She said she would rather go hungry, and then she hung up on me. So seriously, am I the jerk for offering to get my sister groceries from the Dollar Tree? I feel like I might be the jerk here because yes, I could have given her the $40, but then I would not be 100% certain that would actually go towards groceries. And I've learned the hard way to never give her cash. But now I feel like a jerk and a bad sister. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, I don't think you're the jerk because seriously, what you're offering her is some kind of like assistance to get by. And I don't blame you for not giving her cash. If she really is strapped for like groceries, then buying her groceries directly really would be a good solution. So no, you're clearly not the jerk here because it sounds like your sister is absolutely not trustworthy. My manager made me cry today at my restaurant job as she literally embarrassed me in front of the entire staff. And now I honestly feel so stuck and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I really need to vent right now. I don't work as often at this restaurant, but just on Friday nights and Saturday nights. Now I had a full section and we were at the dinner rush. I have been serving in this restaurant for about 7 months and it was my first restaurant job, so I'm thankful they made me a server with no experience. I did mess up a lot in the beginning, but I have gotten better. One of my tables ordered their sandwich with no cheese, and we had a food runner, but I also got very busy with serving drinks, and I was not at the kitchen for about 10 minutes. One of the runners took the no cheese sandwich to the wrong table, and I didn't notice. In fact, I went to ask if everything was fine, and they said yes. So then, when I served my other table and brought the sandwich, I didn't see that it had cheese. I went to ask for another sandwich on the fly, but I then made a fatal error to go to the kitchen and see if it was done, and made a slight comment how my table looked a bit upset. My manager then heard me saying this and went ballistic, saying this happened because I was not in the kitchen. I decided to serve my sandwich, and it was around that time where they were low on water and got on me for not refilling their water fast enough. She found everything that I could possibly be doing wrong and yelled at me for it, telling me my section was too big to handle, even though my full section was happy and drinks were always filled. Now, this isn't the first time I've gotten yelled at by this manager, who by the way is the head manager, and when she does this, I just zone out. I mean, my face just goes blank. She yelled at me in front of everyone. It was so degrading, and other servers were around just completely all quiet. 2 other servers told me that it was not fair how she talked to me, and I eventually broke down in front of them. It happens when I'm mad, and I was having what I felt like was a panic attack because I was still in a rush and I had no time to cry. The no cheese table probably saw my eyes being extremely red, but I was mad. I was humiliated and I felt so powerless. When I then tried to talk to this manager, she just yells and never listens to any reason. And on top of that, she wants to always be right and say to me how she's running a business here. I understand that I'm not the best server, and sure, I made many mistakes before, but she is emotional, degrading, and then she acts like things are okay after that, calling me sweet cheeks and all this other stuff. I understand restaurant work is stressful and we yell, but I really feel like her punching bag, mostly because I don't talk back, and I'm more of the quiet one, still not fully out of her shell type. I have been told that she does this to every server that still works there, and she stops once you stand up to her, and I just need to tell her I cannot be treated like that in front of people. It doesn't help anyone to be like that. She made me cry and one of our hostess cry. Thank God I had eye drops in my bag because my eyes were blazing. She's the #1 reason I want to quit, but the food prices here are high enough where the tip out is really good. I'm still not the best server, but I have improved so much, and I have become better with prioritizing, but she still makes me feel like I did in my first month, and right now with all things considered, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, I'm gonna say this as nicely as I can. You need to stand up for yourself. You do not deserve to be treated this way. You cannot allow this lady to walk all over you like this, because trust me, it will happen every single day if you let it. There will be no compromise in her head. She will literally see you as a punching bag and that's it. And trust me, this is not gonna get easier before it gets better. She won't care if you work hard and you suddenly improve in your performance. She will always find a reason to put you down. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would go straight up to her the next time she tries that, making sure I'm in front of the entire staff, and tell her outright that she's never talking to me like that again. She needs to be respectful just as much as you've been respectful to her. You are doing a good job and she needs to recognize that. And honestly, who cares if she fires you or not? This lady cannot talk to you like that and you do not deserve that. So hopefully you can grow the courage to get this taken care of, or if anything, just find another job, because that manager sounds like an absolute toxic nightmare. Am I the jerk for accidentally catching my brother's girlfriend in a lie, as I exposed the fact that she wasn't actually a lawyer? Because right now the entire family is pissed off at me, and I now am not sure if I'm in the wrong. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 19-year-old female, and I have a brother who's 24 who I will call Liam for the sake of the story. Earlier this year, he started dating a girl that he met at his climbing class that I will call Emma. Emma is 26 years old, and they've been together for 4 months. And this weekend, he decided to introduce her to us. They arrived yesterday and are staying until tonight. She is a really nice person, and we get along well. Then, at one point, my dad asked her what she did in life, and she said that she was a lawyer. Now, I was super interested because I'm currently studying law and have wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 10 years old. So I was very excited to ask her questions about it. I asked about what cases she had, how she studied to become a lawyer, and what her days looked like, and many more things. Now, I might have been a little over-enthusiastic and annoying, but I didn't realize it at the time, and I was just excited to get to ask someone questions about my dream job. But at some point, she said something that seemed incoherent to me. The details might be long and boring, but basically, she just said something that isn't technically possible. So I was curious and a bit confused, and I asked her how that was possible, because I just thought she's the professional, so she must know better than me. But as she tried to explain it, she just said more incoherent and impossible things. It was kind of like someone quoting things from Grey's Anatomy to doctors, if you see what I mean. So I asked more about it to understand, and that's when she admitted that she wasn't actually a lawyer and she worked at a bookstore. She told us that she was very sorry for lying, and then left the table, and my brother followed after her. Well, my parents then kind of scolded me for being so intrusive, and when my brother came back, he was a bit angry. He started telling me that I was wrong for interrogating her, and that I made her uncomfortable, and that she had lied because she was embarrassed about her job, and I just made her more embarrassed. And now he hasn't been talking to me ever since then, and neither has Emma. Now, I'm not sure I'm in the wrong here, but they all seem to think so. I get that me asking questions was annoying, and maybe a bit too much, but I truly didn't have any bad intentions. I was just excited to be able to talk about it with someone. And also, I don't understand how everyone is so okay with the fact that she lied to my brother for 4 months, and then she also lied to us. I get being embarrassed, but I don't know if it's still a bit weird to me. But I never meant to make her uncomfortable, and I genuinely liked her. I don't see how I'm in the wrong, but maybe I just can't see it. So please, I really need to know, am I the jerk for calling her out on not being a lawyer? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk. This is so weird. You have to be a special kind of stupid to sit there and be like, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer. Like, did she not think she was gonna have some kind of questioning about her career? Because that is not a degree or some kind of profession you just walk into. It takes a long time to become one, and you definitely need to know your stuff. So if anything, the original poster is doing their brother a favor. Who would want to date someone who lies in this manner, and so casually at that? No one cares that you work in a bookstore or anything like that. Like, seriously, just be honest about what you do. Because lying like that, in my opinion, is a huge red flag. And the fact that you expose that, in my opinion, is doing your brother a huge favor. Two entitled parents do nothing to shut up their stupid kids as I'm trying to watch Wicked in the movie theater. Because as a result, they were screaming and making noise, as well as running up and down the aisle the entire time. And I'm honestly still pissed off about this experience. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I was really excited to see Wicked, but there were these two awful parents who let their kids talk all through the first half of it. And they were not just talking, but literally screaming. One little girl kept saying, "What's that?" every 5 seconds. Now, I'm not totally sure how many kids there were, but I think there were 2 or 3 of them. Now, I was at the back and there were some empty seats at the front. I went there thinking it would help, but seeing as they were in the middle, it really didn't matter. At the halfway mark, I found a staff member and I asked them to tell the parents to quiet their kids. The kids shut up with their vocal cords, but one boy kept running up and down the aisle, which then caused noise and distracted distracted me because I was right next to the aisle. I felt bad for the kids because they were clearly bored out of their mind. I'm not saying that kids can't like Wicked, but it's not made for kids. The most frustrating thing was the lobby outside was empty, and the kids could have run up and down to their heart's content. But the parents just had to not miss anything and instead ruined it for everyone else. So if you have to see Wicked, get a babysitter. And if you can't get one, then keep your kids quiet. Give them some snacks or an iPad, I don't know. Just make sure you're not being antisocial to everyone around you. Man, this really pisses me off because theater etiquette is so gone these days. People just don't care about anyone else, and when they go to the theater, they're like, oh, I'm gonna make noise and do whatever I want. Especially when it comes to a musical. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear you screeching at the top of your lungs. I didn't come here to listen to you screech along to the musical. I came to watch them do it because obviously the people on screen are way better than all of us. So yeah, this whole scenario just pisses me off, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. An entitled old jerk steals stuff out of my trunk, all as some kind of weird life lesson about how some criminal could steal out of my car when I'm not looking. And I'm honestly so exhausted dealing with my nosy, entitled neighbors that I really hope I don't deal with them ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, we got a new fridge yesterday, and it's one of those humongous double-door monstrosities. And of course, it came with a humongous amount of styrofoam and cardboard, all of which that I need to get rid of. And the quickest way for me to get rid of it is shoving it in my car and driving it over to the municipal waste depot. So I started cutting things apart and bringing them to my car, which is parked in my driveway. Unfortunately, it's so much trash that I have to go 5 times to my car. I go on the first trip, open my car's trunk, and I load it up. And for the sake of convenience, I leave the trunk open. Yes, it's right next to the sidewalk, but I live in a pretty safe area, and I'm only loading trash. So if anyone wants to help themselves to styrofoam, then sure, why not? Go for it. I go back inside and bring the next 2 loads out and into my car, and on my third trip, some old entitled jerk stands next to my car. Now, I don't know him, and he probably doesn't know me, but he's in my driveway and right next to my car. So seemingly, he's interested in talking to the owner of said car, which is unfortunately me. The next time I approach my car with both my hands full of styrofoam, I say out loud, "Excuse me," and then I shove it into my trunk. This old entitled guy then starts asking me if this is my car, but after I tell him that it is, he then immediately launches into a tirade about how I must be crazy leaving it open and whether I want to invite criminals into the neighborhood and how irresponsible I am. I respond by saying, I don't care about your opinion and I need you to get off my property. And I yell this at him, and I honestly just don't even wait for him to reply, but instead storm back inside to get the last bits of plastic wrap. For the last time, I get back to my car, and this old entitled jerk is thankfully missing, but also so is a big piece of styrofoam from my trunk. And this was the base plate that the fridge stood on, which is basically the largest and most unwieldy piece of them all. Now, I was asking myself, did this old entitled jerk take it? I look around for a while thinking that he might have thrown it somewhere, but no, it's definitely gone. Well, my partner and I shrug, we get into the car and drive to the depot. On our way back from there, my wife and I go for lunch and shop some groceries. And all in all, we were gone for almost 2 hours. But the moment we come home and step out of my car, this old entitled jerk storms across the street with a missing styrofoam piece in hand, and he is visibly angry at me for some reason. He then immediately tries to go off at me by ranting about how he's now taught me a lesson about keeping my car locked, and that I should be lucky that it was only him and not some actual criminal, and that I'm getting my property back. Well, once again, I tell him to leave my property, and also that I will call the police if I ever see him on here ever again. He says he's happy to never talk to me again once I take back what is mine, but I reply that I'm not taking that piece back, and I suggest he stick it right up his rear end. And at this point, he says the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. He threatens to call the police on me for not taking the styrofoam back that he stole out of my car. So I put my hands on my hips, and I tell him I would gladly tell the police about how I just had some stuff stolen from my car, and that the perpetrator was right here. Well, he huffs and puffs, and then throws the styrofoam to my feet and stomps off like a little toddler. And honestly, I'm so sick of my neighbor, and I really hope I never deal with him ever again. Wow, this idiot is completely out of line. First of all, it is just styrofoam that he took out of your car, and I think you have the right idea of basically saying, yeah, whatever, if someone steals it, fine, I don't give a crap. But for this guy to walk on your property, lecture you about putting stuff in your car, and then steal from you to try and teach you a lesson, all while complaining that there are criminals in the area, is honestly the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This guy literally is the criminal in this scenario. He's complaining about himself in a way that's just so weird. So honestly, I kind of wish that you did call the police on this guy, because you literally have evidence right in front of you. And seriously, what is with this guy being like, oh, you got taught a lesson today, look at you. It's like, dude, you're not teaching someone a lesson. I don't know you. You literally stole stuff out of my car regardless of what it is, under the guise that a criminal could do this, but you are the criminal in this scenario. It's honestly so stupid, and I just can't stand people like this, where they have this weird sense of like, oh, I'm so much better than you and I'm so much wiser than you. So yeah, this guy was completely out of line, and hopefully you don't have to deal with him ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not paying my parents' mortgage after my sister moved into their house, despite the fact that my parents said they wanted to sell that house and give me a larger portion of the sale? Because right now they're saying I'm betraying the family, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. For the past 8 years, I've been paying my parents' property taxes and mortgage. They are retired and have very little retirement savings because they put all their money into my sister and I's education. We both went to top universities and found successful jobs afterwards. I felt like I owed my parents for all they sacrificed for me, so it was a no-brainer to help them retire with no financial stress. My parents did not consult my sister about splitting these costs with me, and instead the agreement was that I would get a larger share of the house. Fast forward to now, and my sister unfortunately lost her job last year, and as a result, doesn't have much savings. And she even had to move in with my parents to save money while she looks for a job. I then recently found out that my sister pitched staying permanently in my parents' house, and my parents agreed. Now, I was furious at this because I had been paying for the house with the understanding that it would be sold and I would get a larger share of it. It is very likely that my sister never sells the house and instead raises her eventual family there. Because the original agreement with my parents changed, I stopped paying for the mortgage, leaving it up to my sister to take care of it if she's really taking over the house. My parents are furious with me, saying I'm too money obsessed and should be continuing to help the family while my sister is in a tough spot still looking for a job. Instead, they are promising that eventually my sister will pay me out of my share of the house, plus whatever else I contributed over 8 years. Now, I turned that offer down because there's no guarantee that this will happen, and I don't trust my sister to follow through financially. Now, I may be the jerk for taking such a cynical stance and leaving my family in financial stress, but I feel like I was already burned once through verbal agreements and I don't want to get burned again. What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. This honestly is so stupid it's not even funny. You mean to tell me that they went back on a verbal agreement and basically still want you to help pay for it? It's like, wait a second, you're only doing that so you can make money off the sale of the house. Why should you still have to step up and be like, sure, I'll take care of it while also having no equity in it? Like, this is a perfect example as to why you need everything in writing. If it's not in writing, then congratulations, it never happened in my opinion. So no, you're not the jerk for not wanting to do this, because if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. An entitled jerk gives my phone number out just so he doesn't get calls from realtors. So I decided to get some revenge by not only finding this entitled jerk's information, but also giving down his new current phone number so that all these phone calls could finally come to an end. Here's what happened. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started getting spam calls from realtors looking for someone by the name of Roy. They spammed me for a week or two and then it stopped. Eventually, I forgot about it and then I moved on. But every once in a while, I would get another one. Every time it was about Roy selling property in a state on the opposite side of the country. Now, instead of telling the caller off like usual, I talked to them one night. They were happy to give me Roy's full name and the address of the property he kept dangling for sale. So I looked him up, and he had been using my phone number on all the real estate websites just so he didn't get bothered with calls. Eventually, the calls went away and I forgot about it again. But about 2 months ago, they started back up again. I remembered where I had written down Roy's info, and I checked him again for an updated phone number. This time, I lucked out and found his real cell phone. I considered texting him to stop giving out my number, but I didn't want to deal with some crotchety old man who thought he was getting one over on a stranger. The very next day, I got yet another phone call with an out-of-state area code. I said to him, "Oh, you're looking for Roy? Hang on a second, let me give you his phone number." And then I recited his phone number to the caller. The person on the line then asked me if I was related to Roy, but I responded by saying, "Nope, I've never met the man, or even been to that city. I live about 3,000 miles away." But that jerk has been giving out my phone number for 4 years. So I did some research and I found him. They responded by saying, "I don't know what you do for a living, but you should really be an investigator." I thanked him and I said, "Would you mind updating your system with that phone number instead?" And they said that they would, while also thanking me for being so nice about this. But after that, I never got another call again, and honestly, for the sake of my sanity, I am incredibly relieved. That is a really crappy thing to do. Instead of putting down your real number, you give out someone else's fake number. Like, if that happened to me, I would be furious. Like, I would be so annoyed. Who wants to be bothered with stuff that literally has nothing to do with you? So good for you for hunting this guy down, because the fact that he dragged you into his mess is honestly so unfair. Would I be the jerk if I kicked my sister-in-law out of my wedding after she has literally done nothing to help out? Because right now I'm incredibly frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old female and I'm getting married to my fiance in the spring of 2025. His sister initially requested to be in the wedding as she wanted to be a bridesmaid. Since the wedding festivities have begun, she has seemed extremely uninterested in being involved in any capacity. She joined in the bachelorette trip, but didn't help in planning, setting, or cleaning up. She also didn't want to get the bridesmaid, which is after my matron and maid of honor followed up with her numerous times. But finally, I got involved and she purchased the dress. But of course, it was 10 weeks after everyone else. She also didn't attend the bridal shower planning meeting, nor has she asked any of my bridesmaids what she can do to help. She has also been uncommunicative with all of the bridesmaids and won't respond to text messages for days or even weeks at a time. And when she finally does respond, there's always an excuse of why she can't do something or couldn't respond. And now she's informed everyone in the bridal party and my fiance, but not me of course, that she isn't attending the bridal shower because she's going to another bachelorette trip. Everyone has known the bridal shower date for months, and seeing as this is my future sister-in-law, it is honestly a slap in the face. It also might be important to note that her husband is a groomsman and has gone above and beyond with helping and planning outings for my fiance and his groomsmen. Her 2 daughters under the age of 2 years old are supposed to be the flower girls as well. I just feel like her presence and attitude thus far has really put a damper and strain on our wedding, which is supposed to be a happy experience. I also don't want to ruin our relationship, but I'm honestly at my wit's end. So seriously, would I be the jerk if I kick my sister-in-law out of my wedding party? Because right now I'm incredibly frustrated. Okay, to start things out, I don't think that you would be the jerk for kicking her out, but I also think you need to realize that if you do that, this will come with negative consequences. I really think if you do this, it will cause a lot of drama in the family, and this will only create a divide that you will probably have no idea how to fix. And sure, obviously discuss this with your fiance first, but taking this step, in my opinion, is one of those where it's like, okay, there's no going back from this, because then her husband and the kids are going to be out of this wedding party, and there's a chance that none of them will show up. So for me, if I was in your shoes, I would just kind of grit my teeth and bear it and be like, okay, whatever, she's not going to be here and I'm not going to waste my time involving her, because it really sounds like everyone's reached out to try and get her involved. You've called her, you've texted her, you've tried to see if she can be involved, and honestly, she's not communicating. So if I was in your shoes, I would just move forward without her. And sure, she can stay as a bridesmaid if she wants, but you can guarantee that she's staying at the end of the line. Like, she's going to be a bridesmaid in name only, because the way she's acting is just completely inappropriate. So no, you wouldn't be the jerk if you did kick her out, but in my opinion, this really will set things off in a terrible manner. Am I the jerk for saying no to babysitting on my birthday for my best friend who is basically demanding that I travel to Puerto Rico and watch her kid while she goes out and has fun? Because right now she's not talking to me, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I'm a 40-year-old female and I have a supposed best friend who's also 40, and we've been friends ever since we were 15. I have been a mom for 23 years, including my pivotal time where I should have been living my life and having fun, but also being kid-free. She just had a kid at 35. She is single and still lives at home with parents, who by the way provide everything financially to her and the kid. My birthday was this past weekend, and I'm at a stage in my life where I can celebrate my birthday without kids without being mom. Well, my former best friend announced that she was going to Puerto Rico that same weekend, and she said, well, why don't you come with us? Meaning her and her kids. And her reasoning to go was so that she could get some action, if you know what I mean. In fact, her reasoning for inviting me was so that I can watch her kid while she goes and does whatever she wants. Well, I respectfully declined, saying that I had other plans, which I did for a whole month prior to this conversation. Once I said that, she got mad at me because I wouldn't spend $1,300 just in travel and room alone to spend my birthday babysitting her kid. Meanwhile, I've never asked her to watch any of my kids for the entirety of our friendship for any reason, period. The entire friendship of 25 years went down in a downward spiral from there, literally in a matter of a week. This got so bad that she was mad at me that I was working and driving 3 hours out of town and I didn't respond to her. She also sent me nasty pictures in regard to a legitimate award that I won for videography. Well, my birthday came along and she didn't even tell me happy birthday. In fact, she's saying that she's out there living her best life while also posting pictures from Puerto Rico. So seriously, am I the jerk for refusing to watch her kids and somehow setting boundaries? Because honestly, I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk. This is so incredibly intrusive. You mean to tell me that she wanted you to come along to Puerto Rico so that she could have some kind of babysitter while she went out into the night to try and sleep around? Like, what is going on right now? That is honestly insane. At that point, just leave your kid at home and hire a babysitter, because it's clear that she was just trying to use you in this situation. So no, you're not a jerk at all, and honestly, this lady is incredibly entitled, and I don't blame you for stepping away in the slightest. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that if her boyfriend of 3 months and his kid move in, then we are moving out, because things are cramped as it is, and this situation is absolutely not fair? Here's what happened. So my mom and dad had me at a very young age. My mom was 17 and my dad was 19. It was pretty tough, especially back in the day, but we all made it work somehow. But when I was 12 years old, my dad got a heart attack and passed away, and it then just left me and my mom. Ever since my dad, she has had 2 serious guys, but it never worked out because she always said that no one can compare to your dad. Well, that is until now. At this point, I am married, and my mom lives up at the coast in a very small town, the kind where the only shop for groceries is a small convenience store. My husband and I got into some financial issues, and my mom said that we should move in with her so that we can get back on our feet. Now, I was skeptical at first because it is obviously not ideal, but my mom, with her kind heart, said to me, "I can see that you feel bad about it. Don't feel bad. Life is hard enough, and parents are there to lift their children up and catch them when they fall. You need to come back home and regroup and gather back strength so life is not that hard on you." Now, my mom lives in a small coast property that she rents, and it's the type of place that looks like a 1-bedroom cabin from the outside. Well, it's a 3-bedroom and 1 bathroom, and the walls are thin. The Wi-Fi is rocky because of the coast and all the wind, and my husband works remotely in IT. So it's definitely not ideal, but we are making it work. Well, we have been here for about 20 days now, and it was going good, and it honestly felt like a dream. But yesterday, my mom calls me. A guy she dated last year proposed to her, and she hasn't given an answer yet. But she told him and his 16-year-old that they are welcome to move in. A couple hours after that, she came back home all excited, but the smile quickly faded when I started asking questions. And this was nothing unreasonable, just the logical ones that got our heads spinning, like, okay, how could you ask him to move in after 1 phone call of catching up after 3 months of dating a year before? How are we going to live here? She then got defensive, and I tried explaining that I'm just worried about her, and it all feels a bit impulsive. A few hours of everyone just keeping out of each other's faces, my mom came to me asking if I would take a ride with her to the convenience store. On the road, she asked me if I was really just worried about her, and I said to her, of course, you are my mom, and it would have been the same if the roles were reversed. Then she asked me and said, well, what do you want me to say? I responded by saying, I want you to say you didn't just do something that impulsive without giving it some kind of thought. She then said to me, it is my house. You are not going to be dictating what is allowed and who is allowed in my home. I responded by saying, I agree, but you invited your daughter and son-in-law to come and live with you in an already cramped space to help us, and not even 20 days later, you want to move a man in with his 16-year-old son, and after only 3 months of dating the previous year, and then you come to us to inform us about it? I'm not saying that you should have asked permission, but a discussion would have been kind. Well, from there on, it was total silence from the convenience store to back home. When I got home, I told my husband what happened, and he said I better go ask forgiveness for speaking so out of line. He said to me, you can't tell a grown woman what to do. She raised you by herself, and we can't expect her to put her life on hold for us, even if a discussion would have been the right thing to do. Well, I thought about it a while, and I decided that he was right. It was out of line, and so I apologized, but it did not go as I thought it would. She said to me, it's kind of you to apologize, but it wasn't necessary. You just expressed your worry, and I have to respect that because you are my daughter. But he is special, and I'm not going to rescind my offer, and I will not ask for permission. If he wants to come, then he is coming, and that's that. Well, I just stood there completely dumbfounded. How could she be so obtuse about it and not even understand that she is putting us in an uncomfortable situation as well? So I just said, that's fine. You can make your own decisions in life, but we cannot all live here. And so if they move in, we will move out. It really would be the best thing for all of us. She then said to me, oh, come on, honey, you are being a bit rash now. You don't need to move out, and we will make it work. You need to sort out your things. I said to her, no, Mom, it's not rash. We cannot all live here. If the house was bigger, it would be different. But 5 people in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom cabin is a bit much and unrealistic if you really think it will work. My husband also needs to work. And also, where will he work? She then said to me, maybe you both need to just think about this some more and then get back to me. And that was that. Ever since then, my mom is acting like nothing happened, and she's just going on as usual. Now, it's important to note that I've never met this man or his child. In fact, I never even knew his name until this all came up. And when she called me all excited and she said Mike proposed, it then left me stating the obvious. Okay, but who is Mike? So seriously, am I just being an ungrateful child and being a jerk towards my mom? I just feel like this entire plan is too strange, because right now I don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. This is honestly so weird. Because the first question through my head is, why would your mom do this to you? She is literally leaving you in such a bad situation where it's like, okay, we already moved once, and now less than a month later, we're probably gonna have to move again. She literally made you uproot your life, and it's like, okay, why would you do that if you were gonna just be so willing to let someone else move into this small cabin? So no, you're not the jerk at all, because honestly, I would do the exact same thing and definitely move out, because what she's saying is completely unreasonable. My entitled father-in-law is absolutely useless, and it is so frustrating, especially considering that his wife is about to have a serious knee surgery that requires her to do little to nothing until she gets better. And we're honestly so frustrated that right now we don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my idiotic father-in-law's wife of many years is about to have a serious knee surgery, and they are both in their early 70s. She will be entirely out of action for a few months, and it's imperative for her recovery that she does not lift or even try to walk much for much of that time. Now, we are having to plan how they are going to survive this time, and we're going to have to plan their food, their cleaning, laundry, and even working out their sleeping arrangements, because the fully fit and theoretical capable father-in-law is entirely and completely incompetent. He can't and honestly won't cook or clean or do laundry or even get off his backside to help his wife move around. He is entirely disinterested in the entire thing, has not listened to a word the consultant or we have told him about how important this is, and has taken no proactive steps to prepare. We're seriously considering having her move in with us so we can actually look after her during her recovery, as we know that left alone with him, she will have to be the one to be doing the dishes and cooking dinner by about day 3, and that she'll end up worse off than without the surgery at all. I just can't imagine being so intentionally useless, especially towards your own wife. Yeah, that father-in-law is really dumb. If he cared about his wife, he would step up and do what needs to be done. But instead, he's kind of being lazy and almost intentionally incompetent. Like, I wouldn't blame you if you moved her into your house so that you guys can actually take care of her, because what you described is something I could absolutely see happening. An entitled jerk of a real estate agent tricks me into buying a property that absolutely was not what he described. So I decided to get some revenge by exposing the fact that he was cheating on his wife in a way that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. Now, I want to start off by saying that I am by no means an expert or professional at revenge, but I am a patient person. 7 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy my own place. I had saved for 10 years, worked my butt off, and I was so happy to be able to have a place to call my own. Now, being a single person on the mortgage meant that I had to make compromises, and one such compromise was buying a property on a shared block, which, by the way, is a lot cheaper. Where I'm from, this usually means it's on a strata title. For some, that's a bonus, as it means there's a communal fund for repairs, typically with insurance being cheaper as a collective, with other things like maintenance being taken care of. Strata titles also come with a lot of bylaws and restrictions on what you can and can't do. Now, I am a pretty private and introverted person, so having to deal with people and have limits on how I can live is honestly a big no-no for me. But nonetheless, I took my time and I found the perfect property. It was a shared block but a freehold title. The only thing was that I needed to pay public liability insurance for the shared walkway on the property, and this was split equally between the owners. The real estate agent is local to my area, and there's also about 3 degrees of separation between us. He has friends who are friends with my friends type of thing. I didn't know him, but I knew of him, so that sort of felt good. About 5 months after I moved in, I get a knock on the door from the landlord of the property next to me to discuss the insurance. And for me, this is not a problem. I asked for a copy of the policy so I can have some kind of record. Well, it gets sent through, and lo and behold, it's for a strata insurance. I was incredibly confused, and after much back and forth, the property isn't a freehold title but a strata title. I called my lawyer who conveyed the title, etc., and he was seriously dumbfounded. But over it all, he did the right thing and made things as right as they could be. I arranged for a meeting with a real estate agent, and I even brought emails and printouts of the ads that they had, with all of them saying that it was a freehold title, as well as emails between my real estate agent and my lawyer specifically discussing its freehold status. Despite it being an absolute black and white, he refused to accept any fault or offer anything to make things right. But with all things considered, I don't begrudge that. He is looking out for himself, and I honestly get that. However, I would never forget about this. I did enter into mediation with the real estate agent, and all I asked for was when the time came for me to sell, they would do it or cover the cost. I thought that was reasonable, but they flat out refused and offered me $1,000 to go away, which I also refused. I had the options to pursue them legally, and I was advised to do so by the mediator, but ultimately I decided against it for a few reasons, with one of the main reasons being my health at the time. So I planned and plotted about how I would get back at this absolute jerk of a person, and it was then that I settled on this. I found that his personal Facebook page wasn't set to private. I saw some photos of boys on tour trip that he went on a few weeks prior, which was about 5 to 6 months after I bought the property. I also found his address through a business registration search, so on the anniversary of the sale, for 6 straight years, I sent him flowers with the following note: "Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this special day. She has your eyes. Love, Ellie." They varied ever so slightly over the years, but always had "on this special day" and some weird inference of a love child and a desire to reconnect. I also from time to time arranged for postcards and letters to be sent from another country, and it was the country that he was on tour in, always signed with "Love, Ellie" at the end of it. Well, fast forward and I learned about 3 weeks ago that this guy recently divorced. He lost his home and is no longer working as a real estate agent. And the reason for all of this is that his wife had somehow found out that he cheated on her. The story I was told through a friend of a friend basically described how he would get weird gifts and flowers every year, all on the same exact day. His wife apparently finally put 2 and 2 together and realized what the date was, and he admitted to cheating on her. Now, I didn't mean for this, but it turns out a year before I bought my house, he had gone on holiday and came back with a nasty virus you can only get from having just a little bit too much fun, if you know what I mean. And apparently he gave this to his wife, but somehow convinced her that it wasn't him. So, as such, our special day turned out to be right around the time he was deep in some trouble with someone who wasn't his wife 1 year earlier. So at this point, he's apparently lost his house, he's lost half of his retirement savings, and also his business. I do feel a little bit guilty about all of it sometimes, but then I'm reminded that he's a scumbag, and that karma, just like me, is a patient, spiteful, and vengeful jerk. Oh man, I love this story because this is not at all what you expected. You didn't plan on this happening. Like, this really is like one of those situations where you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna mess with this guy, but then you come to find out, wait, he really did cheat. Like, this is crazy. This honestly is so awful. I feel so bad for this guy's wife, but also this guy absolutely had this coming. He was treating you like garbage, and he tricked you into buying a property that, guess what, wasn't exactly the way that he described it. Like, that is false advertising to the highest degree. So good for you for getting some awesome revenge, because this guy absolutely deserved to get taken down. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my seat on the plane just so a father could sit next to his son? Because after they tried to guilt trip me, I doubled down, saying that I'm taking my seat and that this man had better behave himself. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm a 29-year-old male, and I boarded my short flight, which is about 70 minutes long, which was a 2-to-2 seating arrangement. I'd booked myself a window seat, and when I got there, I saw maybe a 7-year-old boy sitting in my spot next to his father in the aisle seat. The opposite row also had his mother and his sister sitting there. Now, although this happened less than 24 hours ago, I was so exhausted that I don't remember the conversation word for word. I pointed towards my seat, and the father asked me if I would mind swapping so they could all sit together, and that their seat is in the row behind it, but I said I would only swap it if it was a window seat. Well, when he said it was an aisle seat, I straight up said I wouldn't swap it. Now, to give context as to why I wanted the window seat, I like to look out, but mainly if I need a nap, that is unlikely to happen if I can't rest my head against the window. Other than that, I hate aisle seats a lot, and I hate them almost equally, if not more so than middle seats. People in the drinks trolley keep bumping into you, and I just can't understand why anyone would choose to sit there, because it really takes the trolley bumping into you once to change your mind. This guy then looked at me and said, "So do you want to sit next to your son?" I responded by saying, "I don't care, I just want the window seat." At this point, this guy stood up and got his son up out of my seat. He then said to me, "You are not a very nice person." I just responded by saying, "It's none of your business and please be polite." He tried to make some stupid rebuttal, but all I could say to him was, just be quiet and behave yourself. Now, I just stood there looking at him serious, and I think he was trying to shame me initially, but he didn't respond with anything else after that. His wife was also watching this the entire time. Now, when somebody in the row behind saw it all happen, he offered to swap and sat next to me, so they did eventually sit next to each other in the end. Now, for all I care, they could have been sat 20 rows apart, or even booked a new flight. I had zero investment in this or their reasons. They can ask and I can say no, and that honestly should be the end of it. And I don't like that they basically tried to force me into swapping with me. If they care that much, then they can book their seats in advance like everybody else, because that absolutely was within their capabilities. Oh man, I can't stand when people do this. And thankfully, I have not run into that myself, but I do have friends who have had this situation, and honestly, it is so awkward. Like, here you are just trying to get in your plane seat, and these people are trying to like guilt trip you into giving up your seat. And it's like, wait a second, just because you can't book seats together doesn't mean this is somehow my problem. So yeah, I don't blame you for not giving up your spot. This guy was clearly trying to guilt trip you, and that, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My idiotic company forces me to wait all the way until like a week before my trip so that I can reserve a hotel for a business trip, resulting in me not only having to buy a hotel room for like twice the amount, but also the entire accounting team getting in trouble for forcing me to do this. Here's what happened. I work remotely for a small company of about 100 employees, and based on my contract, I have to return to the office for a week 4 times a year, and the last time I went back was in November. In the contract, it's laid out that my employer pays 100% of the hotel as well as any gas or airfare. Normally, this is an extremely uneventful routine. It's a mid-sized Midwestern city with not much to do, so it is what it is. A few months before I went back up, we had our financial audit, and one thing that was pointed out to our accounting department was a lack of controls on purchasing. The way it used to be was every manager and supervisor had a company credit card with $1,500 as the balance, and as long as we stayed under that limit, we didn't have to do any kind of purchase orders. After our audit, my accounting team decided to make purchase orders 100% their focus. Going forward, it doesn't matter what it was, what the situation was, or if you didn't have an approved purchase order, you could not make the transaction. Now, all of this happened in early October, right as I'm trying to book my hotel for my on-site week in November. Normally, I have freedom in choosing when I go on-site, but I was requested to go that specific week by my CEO and CFO as we were launching some strategic planning and they wanted me on-site. So I put the purchase order in for the hotel and I don't hear back anything. I then forgot about it for a couple of weeks and then remembered mid-October that I still don't have a hotel room booked. When I initially made the request, it was about $550 for 4 nights, but looking again in mid-October, it's now up to $700 for 4 nights. I then look around and notice that same week as I'm supposed to go up, there's a concert in the same city, followed by a big college sporting event in that town. So I send an email to the accounting people that I need to book a hotel. The rates are going up and room availability is going down. Well, after I did that, I get a strongly worded email back saying that everyone has different priorities and my purchase order will be addressed once all the other ones have done it before me. So at this point, I sit back and wait and keep checking every other day and keep seeing the prices go up and up. I also send a weekly email asking if it's approved yet, and I still keep getting absolute silence back. Then finally, a week before, I email my accounting team with the CFO included, saying if I don't book a room that day, there wouldn't be any left, and I would not be able to make it up for the strategic planning work. About 30 minutes later, I get back an email that says word for word, "You are authorized to reserve a hotel room for 4 nights. So I think to myself, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and book it. And you know that room that was $550? Well, it's now $1,200. So I book it and I move on with my life and I don't think anything of it. Well, last week, I got around to uploading my credit card receipts and submitted my expense report, which included the $1,200 hotel stay. I then got a call from the CFO today just exploding on me, furious about where in the world I did stay that cost so much money and what I was thinking. Well, I very calmly just forwarded the original purchase order as well as all of the emails that I sent saying that the prices were raising. At this point, I had dead silence on the phone as he read through the email chains and just said, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And then he hung up. Well, at the end of the day, all supervisors got an email stating that the purchase order system was being shut down until they could figure out a better way to manage it. Because honestly, the way they were doing it was a complete nightmare. Yeah, this really was so stupid. Like, this honestly could have been fixed so quickly. You mean to tell me that these people would rather you wait until the prices doubled instead of just taking the room and being like, okay, I've got the room and everything's taken care of? Like, seriously, these people are complete morons. It literally took you tagging the CFO just to get them to make any kind of move. So yeah, good for you for maliciously complying and essentially putting them in their place by showing how stupid they were, because this policy, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for ruining my family's New Year's Eve by refusing to join the fun, all because I didn't want to be the designated driver ever again? Because after doing this for literally 7 years and then refusing to do it this year, my family is saying that I betrayed them, and now I feel like a jerk and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old female and I really need some serious perspective. I'm starting to think I might be the jerk, but I still feel like I'm in the right. Every New Year's Eve, my family has a big party at my aunt and uncle's house, and every single year without fail, I end up being the designated driver. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but it's starting to really bug me. It's been like this since I was 19 years old, even before I could legally be allowed to drink. Now, I don't drink that much, maybe a glass of wine or a beer, but I definitely don't get plastered. I'm fine with driving people home if they need it, but for the past few years, everyone just expects me to not drink so I can drive them back. Every year is always the same. Oh, you can drive, you're not drinking anyways. And I always just say yes because I don't want to let anybody down. Well, fast forward to this year on New Year's Eve, and I told my family ahead of time that I wasn't going to be the designated driver anymore. I just wanted to enjoy the night, have a couple of drinks, and not be responsible for getting everyone home. I even told my cousin, who usually gets really sloshed, that I wasn't driving this year, and she was completely fine with it. When I got to the party, it was the usual chaos. People were drinking, laughing, and having a good time, and I was enjoying myself, but at around 11 o'clock, my cousin came over and asked if I was ready to drive everybody home. Well, I then reminded her that I'm not driving tonight, and I'm actually just here to enjoy the party. She looked at me like I was crazy. She said to me, "Oh, come on, you always drive, don't be a jerk." And it's like, what are you talking about? I tried to calmly explain to her that I wasn't being a jerk. It's just that I wasn't going to be the chauffeur anymore. Then my aunt overheard it and pulled me aside. She lectured me saying, "We all agreed last year that you would be driving. You know how much we rely on you. Everyone else is too tipsy and Ubering is unsafe. Just drive this one time for the family." I felt a ton of pressure, but I refused. I told her I'm not their chauffeur, and I wasn't going to do it again just because no one else could figure out their own ride. My aunt then got upset, saying I was being selfish and that we were family. She said I'm the only one who doesn't get too drunk, so it makes sense for me to help out. I told her I had already had 3 beers, so I wasn't even legally supposed to drive myself. And that's when I finally snapped. I told them it's not my job to be their designated driver every year just because I'm the only one who doesn't get blackout drunk. They needed to figure out their own rides this time. Then I got up and I left. I felt bad walking out, but I didn't want to be a doormat anymore. I then spent the rest of New Year's Eve at home, watching Netflix and eating leftover pasta with my boyfriend. My family texted me and called me dramatic, selfish, and saying I ruined the night. They said I was being super sensitive and that everyone was disappointed in me. And right now, everybody's demanding an apology out of me. And by the way, I got home perfectly safe by Uber. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I'm still incredibly frustrated. No, you're not the jerk. These people suck. You told them ahead of time you're not doing this anymore. You literally just wanted to enjoy the party and not feel like you're responsible for everybody else. And I can completely understand where you're coming from. Like the first few times, I'm sure you're probably thinking like, okay, this is fine, I can help out, but it's not a big deal. But now, after all these years of doing this, literally 7 years later, these people are still trying to be like, oh, you'll drive us home, right? Do this for the family. This is what family does. It's like, no, I don't think so. The second you told them that you're not doing that this year should have been the moment that they found someone else to take care of them. And that person, by the way, does not include you. So no, you're not the jerk at all. These people are being super selfish and they're trying to blame you for something that they clearly didn't plan for. Am I the jerk for refusing to sign my neighbor's waiver, which would essentially let him run tractors through my backyard so that he can build his new pool? Because based on what they've given me, it honestly seems very sketchy, and after he freaked out when I said no, I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so last Thursday, my neighbors approached my wife regarding a use of yard waiver since they don't have the clearance to move excavators and bobcats to their backyard to build a pool. The waiver states that they need 10 feet of clearance, and 4 of that would be into our yard based on my measurements, and they say they would repair the grass to its original state. Now, I have an irrigation system and internet lines which run beneath the area which would be used, and the neighbors were leaving for Florida and asked for a 48-hour turnaround. I spoke to the pool company on Friday, and they said they need 10 to 12 feet, and they need the waiver because there is a good chance the ground will be totally torn up. Now, it was my wife's birthday this weekend, so this situation was not on the top of my mind, but my neighbor knocks on the door Saturday afternoon asking for some kind of response. Well, I kindly explained that I'm not comfortable signing the current waiver, especially given the typos, the lack of notarization, and the ambiguities regarding repairs. He then takes this personally and storms out of the house, complaining about how much money he's going to lose. Well, today the project manager from the pool company knocks on our door asking what they can do to resolve this. I told him I don't really want my yard torn up, but at a minimum a new waiver needs drafted, and then I would possibly consider it. He then says we have an electrical easement which runs 1.5 feet into our yard in the exact same spot that he wants to use, and he would just call for access. Well, I checked the design and the deed to see that there is not an easement running through the area that they need. And after that, this guy leaves, and this situation is literally still up in the air. So am I the jerk for refusing to sign sign my neighbor's use of yard waiver? Because right now I'm not sure what to do. Wow, this sounds incredibly sketchy and incredibly rushed. Why on earth would anybody in their right mind try to go to their neighbors and be like, oh wow, you should sign this without like looking it over. We need this signed quickly, so why don't you hop to it? It's like, what are you talking about? This is not enough time to make that kind of decision. And it sounds like these people are going to destroy your yard. They're not going to just like dig it up. They're going to make massive holes and completely ruin everything that you have, especially if you have lines underneath your ground. Like, who knows what kind of damage that's going to do. So no, based on the typos and the way you're getting treated, in my opinion, there's no way I would ever sign that. They better figure out another solution, because what they're presenting to you, in my opinion, sounds incredibly sketchy. An entitled jerk tries to insult my appearance in French by heavily implying that I'm ugly to his children. But what he doesn't know is that I know French as well. So I decided to get some revenge by exposing the fact that I knew exactly what he was saying. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old female and I live in a 50-floor high-rise building in downtown Vancouver. And to start things out, I just got back from a sweet sunset run. A family entered the building with me and held the door for me. They were speaking French together, but I thanked them in English, which is the main language in British Columbia. We all walked towards the elevator and I ended up in the same one as them. Now this was a couple and their 3 kids, all boys around 8 to 10 years old. Now I am bad with ages, but they were the age of being able to speak and think enough to understand what is right and wrong. They were chatting in French, and since that is my mother tongue, I could understand everything they were saying. As we were getting up more than 30 floors, the dad turned to his kids and asked them in French, so is she pretty or not pretty? When he said this, my brain instantly froze, thinking, oh my gosh, could he be talking about me? Well, one of the kids quickly responded by saying,
she's not pretty.
I stopped breathing for a second, realizing now fully that it was truly me they were blatantly judging right in front of me. I then, sadly enough, froze. That's mostly how I react when situations are just unbelievable. With just a few floors left before I could escape the awkwardness, I had a choice to make. I could let it go or seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for perfect linguistic revenge. I'm not the confrontational type, but I couldn't let this slide. But I kept my cool though, and as I exited the elevator, I turned back and said with the most sassy French accent I could give, have a good evening. The look on their faces was absolutely priceless. I left quickly, but in hindsight, I wish I had made direct eye contact until the doors closed. I've dealt with rude comments before, but this moment was a chef's kiss. I've always dreamed of a situation like this, where I could use another language to surprise someone who thought I couldn't understand them. But I'm just saying, keep your language skills to yourself, as you never know when it could come in handy. Learning multiple languages is 100% worth it, if just for bamboozling people like that. The mom stood there silently the entire time, almost like she wasn't really present, and I couldn't help but wonder if she faces this kind of behavior from him as well. There are a few Airbnbs in my building, so I'm guessing they were some kind of tourist, because I never saw them ever again, even though I would have loved to have a second chance at revenge. Wow, the guts on that guy to be like, hey kids, tell me if this lady's ugly or not, right in front of someone in a country where French is their second language. Like seriously, this guy's an idiot. First of all, why would he do that and try to set up some kind of precedent with his kids to be like, oh yeah, we judge women in public? It's like, you do have a wife, you know, right? She's literally standing in the corner, probably wishing she wasn't there. And based on that reaction alone, I'm willing to bet she deals with this all the time from this guy. Like he's probably some absolute monster behind closed doors. But I really think the way you handled this was perfect. I love the fact that you didn't take that sitting down and you did not allow this guy to make some awful comment at your expense. So good for you for putting this guy in his place, because he absolutely deserved it. My toxic, crazy coworker demands that I listen to everything she has to say, all because she has a college degree and I don't. But after dealing with her for so long and listening to all of her awful comments, I finally put my foot down and not only embarrassed her in front of the entire office, but also put her in her place in a way that she truly never expected, resulting in her quitting her job purely out of embarrassment. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened many years ago when I was a secretary for an up-and-coming attorney. It was a small office, just the attorney, me, and the office manager. Now, I never finished college, and the office manager never tired of holding her degree in business over my head. This person, who we will call Nancy, that's not her real name, managed to work her college degree into almost every conversation. Also, anytime I questioned one of her office policies, such as not having a drink at my desk, or not wearing slacks, or not playing a radio in the office for background music, Nancy would explain to me in the most condescending fashion that according to her education, such things were unprofessional and counterproductive. One of Nancy's weirdest policies went right against the stated orders of the attorney we both work for. As a law office, we sent out a lot of correspondence, legal papers, claims, letters, bills. It would all be mailed out. Because their office was fairly remote, remote, and we weren't close enough to downtown to have a runner take in the documents for the court. We had a postal machine to print out the exact postage on each piece of mail, and it was graded by weight according on how much each envelope weighed on the postal scale. We used both number 10 envelopes and manila envelopes to mail things out. Now, anything under a certain scale, if it would fit inside a number 10 envelope, would only cost the equivalent of one stamp. If it was more than 3 or 4 pages, we would mail it flat in the manila envelope, which because of its thickness and size, would automatically require the postage equivalent of 2 stamps. In order to save money because of the volume of mail that we sent out, the attorney specified that if it would fit inside a number 10 envelope and only weighed enough to cost 1 stamp, then just go ahead and fold up the document and send it in the envelope. And sure, maybe it sounds so foolish to be so strict about something as small as the cost of a stamp, but trust me, on a weekly basis, all those stamps added up. So if a document was only 4 pages or less, I would fold it up and put it in a number 10 envelope. And this is where I butted heads with our dear Nancy. The first time she caught me folding up a 3-page document to put in a regular envelope, she lost her ever-living mind. She screamed at me and said, "Don't you dare send that out in a regular envelope. It's more than 1 page and you need to send it flat." So I said to her, "But Nancy," Henry, who is the attorney's name for the sake of the story, was very specific about his instructions. She then fired back and said, "Are you arguing with me? Need I remind you that he made me the office manager and he told me to run this office in the most efficient manner possible. I'm the one in charge and I'm the one with a college degree. So you do as I say." I tried to say something back, but she just interrupted me. "I don't want to hear anything about it. If it's more than 1 page, then you send it flat." Now, I would have thought this was one of her professional business things that she'd learned in her classes, but what she said next not only blew that out of the water, but also convinced me that I was dealing with someone who was a complete idiot, college degree or not. She said to me, "If you fold up a piece of paper, it weighs more. The more paper you fold, the more it weighs. And that's a waste of postage. Henry wants us to save every penny we can, and you're wasting his money." Now, after I scooped up my jaw off the floor and fitted it back into place, I tried to explain to Nancy that paper does not in fact weigh more simply because it was folded up, but she wasn't having it. She started yelling at me that I was stupid, all because I didn't think about the fact that if you fold something up, it gets heavier. She reminded me again that she was the college graduate and not me, and I should know better than to question her authority and her intelligence. She reiterated that if you fold up paper, it not only weighs more, but I was also wasting postage by doing so. And at this point, I even offered to take 4 sheets of paper and fold them up and place them on the scale, and then place another 4 sheets of paper on the scale so she could see that they weighed the same. And when I said this, I thought she was going to slap me. She advanced on me and snatched the envelope out of my hand and ordered me in a screeching voice to reprint the document and mail it out flat because if you fold it up, it weighs more. Now, about that time, Henry's office door opened and the attorney himself appeared in the doorway, laughing so hard he couldn't even talk at first. He said to us, "Ladies, that's enough. I don't like getting involved in office politics, but this time I had to step in. Nancy, I know how proud you are of your bachelor's degree, but obviously they forgot to teach you anything about the laws of physics. So please allow me to enlighten you, because the original poster is 100% right. You can't make something weigh more just by folding it up, and it costs more to send a manila envelope than it does a regular one. So they are doing exactly as I asked her, and going forward, you need to let her handle the mail, because that's the reason I assigned her the task. You are not to interfere with her anymore." He then looked at me and said, "If Nancy gives you any more trouble, come tell me and we'll have a nice sit-down talk about it." Well, from that day forward, Nancy refused to speak to me except when she absolutely had to. And you know what? I was perfectly happy about that. About a month after the heavy folded paper confrontation, she suddenly turned in her notice and found another job. The new office manager who replaced her thought this was an absolutely hilarious story and never got tired of us telling her about it. So with all things considered, am I the jerk in this story in any way, shape, or form? Because regardless, this story is incredibly funny. Okay, first off, no, you're definitely not the jerk. Nancy is an absolute fool, and the fact that she acted like that is crazy to me. Like, I understand being proud about your accomplishments, but she's taking this to an entirely different level. Like, this really is so weird, and the fact that she was trying to like hold this over your head is just insane to me. So seriously, good for you for not putting up with this, because her behavior, in my opinion, was so uncalled for, and you did not deserve that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My narcissistic friend is dragging me down with her, as her negative attitude and awful treatment of others around her has isolated her in such a way where I am literally the only person who even cares about her. And at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I just need to get this off my chest. My friend, if if I can even call her that anymore, is so narcissistic and oblivious that she doesn't even realize that she's driving everybody away, and somehow I'm still stuck trying to save her from herself. She talks crap about everyone behind their backs. I mean, nobody is safe. We're talking friends, coworkers, even people who have genuinely tried to help her out. And then she has the audacity to get hung up on petty things, like people working from home or leaving work early, as if she's the ultimate judge of work ethic. Like seriously? I've seen her fix her own time card more times than I can count, but she acts like she's above it all. What's even worse is how she gaslights me when I try to give her advice. She'll come to me for help and I'll give her realistic suggestions, and then she'll turn around and act like she came up with the idea in the first place. It is honestly maddening. I genuinely try to protect her and get her to be more self-aware, but she's so wrapped up in her own ego that she can't see how she's alienating everyone else. And don't even get me started on how she defends the worst people. At work, there's this employee who is objectively awful. They are lazy, rude, and terrible at their job. Everyone knows it, but she's out here acting like their #1 cheerleader, completely blind to how bad it makes her look. But of course, the problematic people love her because they're the only ones left who can stand her. Meanwhile, everyone else, friends and coworkers alike, have been quietly distancing themselves because her negativity and drama are just too much. Now, what's the worst part about it? I feel like trying to help her is lowering my own stock. I've stood up for her more times than I can count, but she refuses to take accountability or be realistic. Her narcissistic tendencies are holding her back, and at this point, I'm wondering if they're holding me back too. I don't know why I keep trying. Maybe part of me feels bad for her because I see how she's imploding her own life, but I am so exhausted. She gets left out now, and she goes into victim mode, so I try to lift her up. Then she turns around and talks crap again. Has anyone else dealt with someone like this? How do you let go when you know they're dragging you down, but you still feel like you owe them something? What should I do? Honestly, it sounds like you know what you need to do, but for some reason you're unable to do it. Like seriously, this person is clearly dragging you with them because in my opinion, misery absolutely loves company. And this friend, even though I don't think they're actually your friend, would happily drag you along with them if you let them. So seriously, in my opinion, it might be time to find a better friend because the person you described absolutely sounds like someone who's going to ruin your life. Am I the jerk for not letting my wife's family stay at our house for a few extra months after they had been living there for well over 120 days? Because right now, everybody is furious that I'm making them leave. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife's family came here for a better life from another country, and they were staying at our house. It's a family of 5, and our house isn't the biggest. It only has 1 bathroom, so that's 7 people in the house when it's only meant for 2. We gave them 120 days to find a job and place for themselves. They all found jobs, but they couldn't find an actual place to stay, so they are renting bedrooms, and now they're upset with us because it really seems like they weren't even trying to find a place to stay, and it seems as if they got way too comfortable. If they were looking, they would have asked me for help, but they asked me maybe once about it, and that's it. They were not proactive about it at all, and now they're mad at us. I told my wife they had to leave, and now everybody's upset with me. So am I the jerk here? Because honestly, I don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk. We might not have a lot of information, but I think it's safe to assume that if you're going to another country, then you need to plan way better than just living in a relative's house. Like you literally opened up your home so that they could stay there, and it was already super inconvenient. Adding 5 people into a house that's only meant for 2 people, like that must have been insane and so annoying. And seriously, let's think about the alternative here. Let's say you did let them stay a little bit longer. Like what's the end goal here? Are they seriously expecting to stick around and like not find a place of their own? Why are they getting mad at you for them not planning properly their entire lives? So no, you're not the bad guy here, and you're definitely not the jerk. Because if they really wanted to live in another country, then they absolutely should have planned better. Am I the jerk for defending my boyfriend against my dad after he made some snide remarks about him that put him down in public around my entire family? Because right now I'm still incredibly pissed off. Here's what happened. So I recently had a baby with my boyfriend of 3 years who we will call Nick. I work as a nurse with crazy hours, and Nick previously worked in a warehouse. When I was pregnant, Nick expressed to me how he wanted to stay at home with the baby at least for the first couple of years, as his dad was not in his life and he wants to soak up every moment of our child's life. And we both agree that this would be best for our baby. I come from a conservative family, and my parents were first not too pleased that we had a baby before marriage. My dad has made little hints here and there to Nick, asking when he's going to make me an honest woman. When I told him that Nick would stay at home with the baby, my dad took his glasses off, he wiped his forehead, and he shook his head. But he did not say anything further. Recently, at a family function, my cousin announced that she is pregnant. Everyone was giving her and her husband congratulations, but my dad made a snide remark to them, saying saying, "Oh, you should talk to Nick here. He's an expert at the baby stuff." The comment was obviously meant to belittle Nick, and my boyfriend just gave a nervous chuckle and nodded. Later in the day, our baby needed a diaper change. I was in the process of getting up to change him when my dad said to us, "Wait a second, isn't that Nick's role? You do nothing while my daughter works. You can at least change a diaper while she's with her folks." Now at that point, I had it. I told my dad to stop with his remarks. Nick is an equal partner in our relationship, and he is a wonderful dad who does most of the childcare. I told him just because he didn't do anything when it comes to child rearing for me and my siblings, that does not mean that all men need to be like him, and he needs to get with the times because this isn't uncommon anymore. Well, things got awkward, and my mom quickly changed the subject to something else, and my dad was pretty quiet for the rest of the night. After the event, my dad called me saying I disrespected him in front of our entire family, and that apparently I was out of line. He said I insulted him as a father and that I needed to apologize. But I told him I had nothing to apologize for, and I was tired of him picking on Nick. Well, my mom agrees with my father that I was too harsh on my dad. So seriously, am I the jerk here for defending my boyfriend? Because right now I'm honestly incredibly pissed off. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Like seriously, your dad was being so inappropriate. The fact that this guy was making snide remarks in public nonetheless, essentially putting down Nick and acting like, oh yeah, he doesn't do anything for this family. He's an awful father. The least you can do is change your kid's diaper while my daughter works. Like all of that is so uncalled for, and if anything, he's the one that was out of line. So I think it's pretty ironic that he's trying to be like, you need to apologize to me. You embarrassed me in front of the family and you were out of line. Because if anything, he's the one that absolutely should be apologizing. Because what you did, in my opinion, is exactly what a partner should do. You defended him against someone that was defaming his name. And in my opinion, Nick did not deserve that in the slightest. My friends are convinced that my boyfriend is only learning ASL so that he can drive a wedge between me and my friends. But now, after they've seen the truth, we've exposed one of my other friends as an absolute snake, as his only intention was to spread seeds of doubt with me and my boyfriend. Here's what happened. So this story is an update to a previous story the original poster covered, where they're dating someone who's learning ASL so that they can better communicate with their brother. Here's what they had to say. So to give the rundown, I've been dating a guy who we will call John for about 5 months. This is my first relationship, and he met my family 2 months ago and had befriended my brother who is deaf. The two of them have been gaming with each other ever since, and John has been apparently learning ASL to communicate with my brother better. However, my friend said that his behavior could be seen as obsessive, emotionally manipulative, and downright creepy. And with that brief introduction out of the way, let me get into some more details. First off, I wanted to thank everyone who gave me their insights on my original post. As I said, I'm very new to relationships, so reading insights outside of my friend group was very eye-opening. To start things off, many people said that my high school friends are untrustworthy and they're awful people who never bothered learning ASL despite knowing me for a long time. And I will say that I take accountability for this. I'm not saying they're blameless, but it's not entirely their fault. For some context, our family moved to an area when I was in senior year of high school, and this is all due to my dad's job. My friend group, which has 2 guys and 2 girls in it before I joined, was already tight when I came in. They then took me in after I got grouped together for a school project, and they've been with me ever since. I mean, we've been friends for about 4 years now. They're not exactly saints, but they helped me survive my senior year in one piece. They are fun to hang out with, and they were the support I needed when I was struggling. Also, during that time, my brother was having an especially hard time adjusting because of his disability, so my friends never really saw him a lot. To be clear, I was never ashamed of my brother. It's just that whenever my friends came over, he either locked himself in his room or was in a different area with his tutor and never really interacted with us. Whenever he does come out, he is really shy and awkward, so my friends mostly get glimpses of him. By the time my brother became more comfortable in our area and found his own circle of friends, my friends and I had already graduated from high school, and we don't really hang out consistently anymore. They're friendly and polite with my brother, but then again, they never interacted as much, to the point of them actually needing to learn ASL for him. Now with that bit of context out of the way, let me get back to the update of what happened after the last story. Last week, my friend group had our year-ender party, and I decided to bring John along so that he could meet the rest of my friends. My other friend in the group also brought his girlfriend, so this wasn't really weird. And for reference, others have done this in the past as well. Now, I've commented in the previous post that John had only met my closest guy friend, who I will be calling Mike for the sake of the story, so I wanted the rest of them to form their own opinions of John after they've met him. Initially, there was some weird tension and awkwardness from my friend group towards John, and they were a bit cold, and they were throwing some harsh remarks towards him. Eventually though, they all warmed up to him, and they were actually pleasantly surprised by his personality. personality. We all got along well, and we all even had fun in our games. However, I could tell that there was still awkward tension coming from Mike towards John and towards the rest of the group. He was throwing meaner jokes more than usual, and he's kind of isolating himself from the activities. The day after the party, I had lunch with my closest friend, who we will call Sophia, just to try and clear the air, because I could tell that they could also sense something was off. Now, a lot of people speculated that Mike had a crush on me and was jealous of my relationship with John, and it turns out that you were all 100% correct, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Apparently, Mike has had a crush on me since our senior year of high school. However, he is known in our school as a notorious ladies' man and had a new girl with him almost every month, and this got exponentially worse during college. He had different hookups almost every night, and he even had a pregnancy scare with a girl last year. I knew all about this because he bragged about sleeping around every time we met up. Now, what I didn't know was that the entire time, Mike has been making up fake stories about me and him. Sophie told me that apparently, Mike and I had a pact that if we were still both single when we were 30, we would apparently marry each other. Also, he told our friend group that we hooked up after graduation and that he was my first time, if you know what I mean. So he's apparently my special person, whatever that means. He also told them that we'd been secretly hooking up consistently throughout college. And for context, Mike and I go to different universities that are just about 30 minutes apart. Lastly, Mike told them that I said I'm in love with him. He told our friends not to tell me anything, just so I don't get embarrassed or upset since I have this image of being somewhat of a prude. Mike also told our friend group that when he met John, he thought that John was a total jerk who has been manipulating me and taking advantage of my innocence. He said that John had been forcing himself into my family and is driving a wedge between me and my friends. Mike also said that after he had lunch with me and John, he tried to convince me to stay away from John because he's not a good influence on me, but apparently John had effectively brainwashed me. This explains why my friend group was already so antagonistic towards John, especially when I told them about him. Now, for the record, none of what Mike said was true. There was no pact, we never hooked up, and I never have been in love with him. After that, Sophie and I asked the rest of our friend group, except for Mike, to jump on a FaceTime call with us. They all shared different versions of what Mike had told them, and there were a lot more, but I disputed everything. We were all collectively shocked about everything that we had learned that day. They then apologized for their behavior towards me and John, and I told them I understood given all the lies fed to them by Mike. Then everybody agreed to kick Mike off the friend group. Sophie suggested that maybe we could have an intervention for Mike first, but I just said that I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. The rest of the group agreed, so we essentially just cut him off. Sophie said she would still talk to him just to inform him of everything that happened, but I really just wanted to distance myself from him. Now, it's been a week of being Mike free, and Sophie said that she and another guy friend talked to Mike, and he became extremely defensive. He was confrontational and even aggressive. He wasn't physically violent, but he called them names, attacked their characters, and made such awful statements about everyone in our friend group that I won't include them here. And it's like cutting him off was clearly the right call. But with that in mind, I want to share some uplifting updates. After reading everybody's comments in my previous post, I reflected on my relationship with John and my friends. I then talked to my parents for advice, since they have the best relationship I know of. They told me that from what they saw of John when he visited our home and how I spoke of him, it seems like he is legitimately a nice person with pure intentions. It also helps that John and I have been friends for months before we started dating, so I already knew his character even when there was less pretense of him trying to impress me. I then told John about everything that happened and apologized, fully expecting him to be mad at me for doubting him and his intentions. Instead, he said he understood because of course it was just natural for me to trust my friends and expect them to have my best interests. He then asked me if there was any point in our relationship where I felt uncomfortable or uneasy around him, and I categorically said no. I told him that he's my safe space and he has nothing to worry about. He then reassured me that his intentions with me are genuine, and he even said he sees a future with me, which I reciprocated. Also, John and my brother's friendship is still going strong. In fact, my brother participated in one of John's Dungeons and Dragons sessions with his friends, and John and I both acted as the translators, and we were delighted to see that most of John's friends already know the ASL alphabet, and apparently they even had that included into the lore of their campaign. Also, my brother had been asking John some tips for working out and has been getting really fit lately since they do have the same body type, but John is just a bit more toned. Also, I met John's family for the first time for their annual get-together, and it was super fun. There were games and contests. Also, I wasn't prepared for it, but apparently, since their mom is a theater performer and their dad is a music producer, it was their family tradition to have a talent showcase. They gave me a pass this time, but they told me apparently I should prepare something impressive for next year. John and his brother performed a song by NSYNC, while his sisters and their husbands did Defying Gravity from Wicked. Their parents did the medley from The Sound of Music, and it was just a complete blast. I really felt their family's warm welcome, and they really treated me as one of their own. I could see where John got his good values and good looks from. So that's it for this update. My relationship with John is stronger than ever, and I finally know exactly who my true friends are. Wow, good for you. I love this update because seriously, I knew for a fact that Mike was being weird. This guy's clearly jealous that John is dating the original poster, and he was spreading lies to try and ruin that for you. So good for you for finally knowing the truth, and hopefully your relationship with John continues to work out. A psycho Karen threatens to call the cops on me for parking in front of her house, claiming that this is the third time she's told me not to park there, despite the fact that I've never been by her house ever in my life. And I've honestly never run into someone as crazy as this lady because she absolutely was out of her mind. Here's what happened. So I'm a 6'3", 250-pound male, and I work at a job that requires me to care for lawns. The way my work for my company operates is that I will pull up to a customer's house, usually in front of the lawn section. I will need to make sure that for one, I'm not blocking a fire hydrant or a mailbox, as this is quite literally illegal, and I would get into a massive amount of legal trouble, even if I was just sitting in front of them for less than a few minutes. Secondly, I need to make sure that I'm not blocking the customer's driveway or the neighbor's driveway, while also ensuring that the door to access my equipment is on the correct side, and this would be preferably away from the street. I'm also only allowed around 10 minutes for anything under 5,000 square feet. In total area, I usually have about 25 stops in a day. And yes, this is as hectic as it sounds. Usually, I start work at around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't finish until 4:30 or even 5. And the worst part is that my company is currently in its slow season, so being fast and efficient is crucial if you want to get home at a decent time. Usually, this has the added effect of doing each stop as quickly as I can, since I know that if I don't walk fast enough and at a correct pace, I will slowly start to fall behind. To be clear, I walk, climb hilly terrain, climb stairs, and push a 20 to 40 pound seat spreader on just about every type of rough terrain you can think of, and this comes with the side effect of walking around 10 to 20 miles a day. And my god, how I wish this was an exaggeration. As I pulled my work truck into the cul-de-sac, I noticed that I had two stops almost right next to each other on the same street and on the same side of the road. This is uncommon but does happen from time to time and is greatly appreciated because it means less driving throughout the day for me. The two houses were right next to each other, except for their neighbor whose house looked smashed in between the two much larger homes. So this meant that I wouldn't have to put my equipment up after I was finished with the first house, and I could instead directly move over to the other house, saving somewhere around 15 minutes of load and unload. The first house had a fire hydrant in front of it, and the other had a mailbox for the neighbor. Now the Karen's house, who is the Karen of this story, had nothing in front of it, and also conveniently had a gravel section where one could park a car off the street. However, because I've been in situations where customers don't like us using their gravel patches, I just went ahead and I parked next to it on the street itself. Fast forwards, and I'm heading from the first house to the other client's home after finishing up, and I see a small woman, maybe about 140 pounds, with a very annoyed expression on her face. And it was at this moment I knew I was in for a world of hurt, as this lady caused me problems that I truly never expected. Now, at first I wasn't expecting anything from her, and I thought that she wanted to ask me a question about what I was doing to her neighbor's lawn. I mean, this does happen a lot. But instead, I was almost immediately yelled at for apparently parking my truck in front of her house for the third time. She also said comments such as, "How many times do I have to tell you idiots not to park here?" Now, I've been working with this company for almost a year, and rarely, outside of a few brief conversations, I've never had a problem with anyone. And if someone asked me to not park somewhere, I would make a note in the instructions and make sure that future texts didn't repeat the same mistakes. As well, sometimes people ask you to move out of the way or to a different spot because they are picky about parking spots, as well as idling trucks on their lots. Again, this takes all of like 5 seconds and it isn't a big deal in the slightest. So, after taking in her near nonsensical rambling and yelling, I simply replied by saying, "Of course, that's not a problem, ma'am. I'll make a note in the instructions so this doesn't happen again. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." She then replied to me and said, "Well, good. Make sure you don't park in front of my house anymore." After a few more back and forth of this, where she is basically just saying, "Don't park here anymore," she then walks away, and I think to myself, okay, that's the end of it, right? At this point, I can see that the customer's yard is small, and I think that this yard will take maybe 5 minutes tops. And this is where I think I messed up, because she never asked me to move to a different place and only asked me to not park there next time. So I figured I could go and crack out that lawn too, and thus went off to do exactly that. Because I was a bit behind in my schedule, I very stupidly thought that putting everything back in my truck, only to then take it out again, was unnecessary, and I wouldn't be more than a few minutes, so it should be fine, right? Well, after I I was done with that lawn, which took a total of 6 minutes maybe, I came and loaded up my equipment, which only took about 30 seconds, and then I sat back in my truck and started to print out the receipts for the client's lawns. And as I'm doing this, the Karen comes back up to me, but this time she's on the phone with someone and she is visibly pissed. Now, when I say she was angry, I am not joking either. She looked like an over-aggressive chihuahua when it's angry, and she was actually shaking from anger, I can assume. She started to scream at me this time though, which really caught me off guard because again, I'm not on her property, only in front of it. Before she could start her ranting, I called out with my dumb smile and said, "Don't worry, I'm printing the receipts and then I'm leaving. Just give me 30 seconds. Well, this was absolutely not the correct thing to say. She rushed up to the side of my truck with a face that looked like she would end my life if given the chance. She started flying off the handle and screaming loudly, "No, you will move now. Not later, not in a minute, right now. This is the third time I've talked to you about doing this, and I won't stand for it anymore. I shouldn't have to waste my precious time for a third time just because an idiot like you can't pay attention." Now me, being very confused, just replied back by saying, "I'm sorry ma'am that you've gone through that, but this is the first time I've ever been to your neighbor's house. You may have spoken with a different technician." Well, before I could continue, she cuts me off, shaking even harder somehow and screaming at me, No, I don't care if this is your first time here. This is unacceptable. I don't pay for your service and you shouldn't be parked in front of my house." At this point, I'm slowly cluing into her slight insanity, and I got out of my truck to go and deliver the receipts, which meant that I had to get closer to her as she was standing right next to my truck. She then yelled at someone, who I assume was a support person from my company, and started screaming, "Oh my God, sir, he got out of the truck and he's approaching me aggressively." Now at this point, I just rolled my eyes and I quickly went to deliver the first receipt. Because I had to cross by her to get to the other house, I heard her once again screaming like a banshee. She was saying to me, "You will not leave later, you will leave right now." Well, as calmly as I could, I said to her, "Ma'am, please calm down. I'm just gonna hang these receipts on the doors and then I'll leave. Look, you're so angry that you're literally shaking. Just calm down for like a second and then I'll leave." Well, she did not like this answer and went on about how I was being rude and aggressive with her. And then out of nowhere, she tells me, "I will not calm down. How dare you? You are leaving right now or I am calling the police." I let out a sigh and I hopped into my truck, still holding the receipt, and turned it on to leave, all while she stared daggers at me, still shaking like crazy. I literally just did not have time for any of this. Now, I will admit that I was a little bit petty here because I looked her in the eyes, grinned with my widest smile, and then I waved at her and I said, "Have a great day, ma'am." And I said that as sarcastically as I could, and then I sped off. Now, this happened so quickly that I can only initially describe it as sudden Karen whiplash. I never thought that this could happen to me, especially with how little I interact with customers. I was legitimately so baffled with what happened that it took me about an hour before I realized I had actually encountered a Karen in the wild. Oh my gosh, I cannot stand when people act like this. It really is insane in my opinion. When will people like this learn that yes, people can park in front of your house? They can put their cars on the public road just like anybody else. The fact that they feel the need to be like, "Wow, you can't park in front of my house on this public street." It's like, no, actually I can do that. If I'm not blocking the driveway, your house, or your mailbox, or like a fire hydrant like this guy describes, then guess what? Legally, I have every right to park there. And sure, there's some extenuating circumstance that I don't know about that I'm sure someone can chime in and be like, actually, this is the exception to the rule. But I think generally speaking, we can all agree that, yeah, you can park in front of someone's house if you're not blocking anything. So yeah, this Karen was insane, and the way she was acting, in my opinion, is absolutely unhinged. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled neighbor called the police on my parents' house, all because my parents banned them from hunting on their property, forcing the game warden and the police to show up under the assumption that my parents were poaching deer. Here's what happened. So my parents are retired and live in a little house on about 7 acres of land. It's not a big plot of land, but it is cozy and it's private, just outside of town, and about 6 acres of woods with a creek running through the middle of it. It's really a beautiful piece of ground. With the woods and creek, they get lots of animals going through, including deer. A couple of years ago for Christmas, we got my parents a few trail cameras so they can see what all is going through. My mom likes photography and she's been able to get lots of photos of deers, foxes, wild turkeys, coyotes, and other wildlife going through their yard. Now, as you may imagine, this is some prime hunting land. My husband occasionally enjoys hunting and has from time to time gone down there for deer season, but he doesn't do it frequently. My parents have had several people stop and ask them to hunt on their land, and they always say no. Frankly, it's just barely big enough to legally hunt, and they don't want people all over their property all the time hunting. They have no problem anytime my husband wants to hunt, which is not often, but then again, he has family. Now, there is a neighbor who lives down the road who badly wants to hunt on my parents' land and has been told no repeatedly that they don't allow hunting. Well, last year my husband was in the woods and he found a tree stand installed that wasn't his. Unfortunately, when they checked the trail cams, the SD cards had been removed. Now there's no proof that it's the neighbor, but they do suspect him. My parents travel a lot, so it would be really easy to do that without their knowledge. Well, my husband took the tree stand down, and I believe the cameras were replaced with new ones that don't need SD cards. Anyways, last month before deer season, the neighbor again asked my parents to hunt and they said no. They don't allow hunting except their son-in-law if he wants to hunt. Well, my husband decided he would try and get a deer this year for deer season, so he got a deer permit and went on the first day of deer season. And he shot a decent-sized buck within 10 minutes of getting in the woods. My dad was awake and heard the shotgun blast and came out to see if my husband needed help. My husband field dressed the deer, and then my dad, who is the nicest guy you've ever met, got his tractor out of the garage and drove it to the woods. He scooped up the deer in the bucket and put it in the bed of my husband's truck. So hunting ended pretty quickly into the deer season this year. Well, about an hour later, a county sheriff's deputy and a game warden showed up to my parents' house. Apparently, they said that they received a complaint of unauthorized hunting and deer poaching. The officer said that the neighbor called and said that they had been told repeatedly there was no hunting allowed on that ground, and that they had seen someone go into the woods with a shotgun, heard a shot, and then someone with an orange tractor picked up the deer and put it in the bed of a black pickup truck. Now, in our state, if you are caught poaching, they can confiscate your firearm, any hunting gear you have with you, and any vehicle used in the course of hunting and poaching. So the neighbor was really hopeful that they'd take my husband's gun, truck, and my dad's tractor. Well, that's when my dad said, "This is my house and my land, and the orange tractor is mine. The black truck belongs to my son-in-law, who has permission to hunt here anytime he wants." My husband then produced his valid deer tags and it was all good. So seriously, screw that neighbor who had to have been watching the woods with binoculars, because there's no way he could have seen all of that from his yard. Yeah, that neighbor's one of those busybodies who doesn't get their way, so he decides, oh yeah, I'm gonna ruin everybody else's fun. And it's like, why, dude? Just go get a life and go somewhere else to hunt. Why does he get to ruin the fun for everybody else all because they didn't get what they wanted? So thankfully, this didn't result in you guys getting in trouble, because I'm pretty sure if this was up to the neighbor, then you guys probably would have lost everything in the process. Am I the jerk for no longer giving support to my wife's family after I became successful with my own company, despite them constantly talking down to me about it? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm justified in feeling this way. Here's what happened. So my wife and I grew up in a fairly poor environment. Her grandfather had money, but her mom didn't and her sister doesn't. My wife has an incredibly strong work ethic, and she's probably more so defined as a workaholic. When I first met her, I was in trucking, and I was making about $70,000 a year. Since then, I developed a niche for a specialty marketing field and became very good at it. And all of my friends encouraged me to go into business for myself with a marketing company. My wife was fully supportive of this, even after we discussed the financial difficulties that we would have for the first year or so due to having a limited budget. And I made sure that she knew that for some months, I may not get a paycheck from the business, as my salary is only paid monthly. Well, her family, however, were not as supportive. They accused me of neglecting my family, being lazy, and not wanting to work. They would constantly be bringing up the fact that I didn't have a job, because apparently I was always home, despite the fact that I work remote. She would defend me, but they would always ignore it, and continue to call me lazy and a deadbeat for putting my daughter in daycare while I work from home. I was still driving a truck part-time to have steady, reliable income, but it was only half of what I was making on a good week. In the last year, however, I have grown my income from my business beyond what I was making in trucking, and I now have very little overhead. Since we cut costs back when I first started, we realized a lot of things we were paying for we could do without, or found other alternatives, and we never really added those expenses back, so it's like we have significantly more money now. I still drive a semi occasionally for a friend who owns a truck, mainly to keep my CDL active and stay knowledgeable in the industry as a fallback. And you know what? Her family has taken note, and they are constantly asking to go out to eat with us and hang out with us. And then they get mad when I never pay for the meals, the outing, or the vacation, or anything. And you know what? Looking back, I can understand why they never had money. They were living well beyond their means. But if it makes them happy, then it is what it is. I let my wife do whatever she wants with her money, which sometimes includes buying stuff for her family, which I support her doing with her money if that's how she wants to spend it. But I make sure that she knows I don't want a dime of my money going to her family, since they were very unsupportive of what made us our money, and would go as far as to talk down about me for doing what led to our money. Now, with all that in mind, I seriously need to know, am I the jerk for how I feel about my wife's family? Because right now, I don't know if I'm in the wrong. Yeah, your extended family sounds incredibly toxic. These people were trying to be like, wow, you're trying something new? You're doing something for yourself that we couldn't do? How dare you do that? You're lazy and irresponsible. Like, the only reason they're putting you down is because because they could never do that themselves. Not in a million years would these people ever get off their butts and do something for themselves in this kind of way. So when they see someone doing that, they immediately go, "Oh my gosh, you're so terrible." And they find every reason under the sun to criticize and put you down. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because the way your wife's family is treating you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My messy coworker never cleans up her mess, constantly leaving the microwave and the refrigerator disgusting in our break room. So I decided to get some petty revenge in a way that truly ruined my coworker's day. Here's what happened. So I was an office manager for a small family-owned business. At the time this happened, we only had about 10 people working out of our offices, and some of those people were only in the offices for a few hours a week. But we had 5 people in the office full-time. We have a small break room area with a refrigerator and a microwave, and everyone kept drinks in the refrigerator, and a few people brought lunches occasionally, but only one person brought their lunch every single day. And for the sake of this story, we'll call this person Jessica. Jessica is not their real name. Now, not only would Jessica bring lunch daily, she would also keep all kinds of food in her office and in the refrigerator. The problem was, oftentimes Jessica would leave food in the refrigerator for weeks at a time, and it would go bad and start smelling, and just taking up room needlessly. Now, Jessica was also the primary user of the microwave, but she would never cover her food, and the microwave was always dirty, which was why no one else used it. So I had to set a new rule that mostly affected Jessica. The refrigerator had to be cleaned out every Friday, and you had to take your stuff home or toss it. Also, Jessica was instructed to clean the microwave every day. Now, I was always the last to leave on Friday, so I started tossing Jessica's food on Friday after she left. This got her attention very quickly, and she would take her stuff home from the refrigerator, but she wasn't cleaning the microwave. So fast forward, and once in a great while, I went to use the microwave and it was disgusting and gross, and Jessica was gone for the weekend. So I ended up cleaning it just so I could pop some popcorn. After I popped my popcorn, I climbed up and unplugged the microwave and put an out of service sign on it. The next week, Jessica came in and was shocked when the microwave wasn't working. I told her I tried to make popcorn and it just stopped working. She asked when it would be fixed, and I told her it was pretty low priority, so I didn't know. The microwave was left unplugged for over 8 months, and the only person who ever asked about it was Jessica. Well, finally, she mentioned it to the owner and he came to talk to me. I explained the situation and he just had a good laugh. Now, Jessica was later let go because of other reasons, but after she was let go, I plugged the microwave back in, and the microwave miraculously was always clean without Jessica using it. And while this is some petty revenge, I'm so glad that it got to her all the way up until she finally got the boot. I love this for so many reasons because honestly, sometimes coworkers can be the absolute worst. They don't clean up after themselves, they treat you like garbage, and it seems like, especially when you have a Jessica in your office, they're always acting on selfish impulse and never care about the general good of everybody else. So personally, I love the petty revenge you enacted on her, because if anybody deserved it, it absolutely was Jessica. Am I the jerk for taking my boyfriend and his daughter to my family gathering, knowing that it would make my brother-in-law uncomfortable in some way? Because as a result, this caused some awful drama, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 22-year-old male, and I've been dating my boyfriend, who we will call Mark, for about 2 years now. He has a 7-year-old daughter who we will call Lily, and this is very important for the story. I met Mark 5 years ago when I began babysitting his daughter while he worked. For reference, he's a single dad and the mom passed away. And since Lily and I got along great, I became the sole babysitter when he needed. Now, it was practical because we lived 2 streets apart, and just overall the best choice because I was available, I liked them, and they liked me. But eventually I fell in love, and I quickly moved in with him and his daughter, to whom I became a second dad. But here's the core of the problem. My 35-year-old sister is married to my 33-year-old brother-in-law, so every family gathering, I see him. He is relatively a nice guy, even though we're not friends, but he also has never met Mark. Now, at first, when I started dating Mark, he didn't want to come to family gatherings. Reason being is that he's not comfortable around people. He is a shy guy, and of course I understood that. But last week, it was my mom's birthday, and she really wanted him and our daughter to be there, so he finally accepted. When my sister and my brother-in-law found out that he would be there, they were mad at me, and I didn't understand why at first. Well, that is until she took me apart and called me insensitive and egotistic towards my brother-in-law for inviting him, even though I had no idea why it made him uncomfortable. Apparently, when he was younger, his parents divorced because his dad cheated with his babysitter, and it caused him to be traumatized. I told her it was BS, that my boyfriend was a part of my life, part of my family, and I wouldn't exclude him just because her husband was uncomfortable. I also reminded her that there was no cheating, no breaking of trust or anything in my relationship with Mark, but she called me insensitive again and then she left. My mom's birthday party was 2 days ago, and my family loved Mark and Lily, but all day my sister and brother-in-law just kept glaring at us and muttering insults or mean comments under their breath. They brought it up up again after dinner, but directly to my boyfriend and our daughter this time, telling her that your dad and his boyfriend are disgusting freaks, or that he's a cheater who doesn't care about your dead mom. Now, obviously, my boyfriend and I absolutely lost it against them. Knowing my boyfriend's temper, I told him to take our daughter to the car while I was ripping a new one to my sister. We then very shortly left, after apologizing to my mom for the mess it caused. But now, my family's group chat is divided. Mostly everyone is on our side, but a few of my extended relatives are on my sister and brother-in-law's side, saying that we went too far and should have just ignored them or went back home. Now, I know that my mom asked for them to come, but I'm feeling really guilty that it ruined her birthdays to have this drama. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, I cannot believe anybody's on your sister or brother-in-law's side. Seriously, they're trying to say that you went too far? These people went up to a child and said, yeah, your dad doesn't care about your dead mom and he's a cheater. And it's like, what universe are we living in right now? This is crazy. What is happening here is someone who can't handle their own triggers, and so they make it everybody else's responsibility and punish anybody who doesn't follow exactly what they do. Because if this guy really is traumatized by some like babysitter and like husband relationship, then guess what? Go to therapy and work it out. Don't pin that on your brother-in-law and his new boyfriend and be like, oh yeah, you're part of the problem. You're reminding me of my trauma. You need to stay away from me. It's like, no, I'm just as welcome there as anybody else. I'm not going to modulate my life just because you have some stupid issue that, by the way, has nothing to do with me. And trust me, if I was in your shoes, I would be doing way more than just yelling at these people. The second they got in that kid's face and said any of that is the second they crossed a line that they can never come back from. That is so wildly inappropriate and it is not okay. So these people who yelled at your daughter, as well as anybody agreeing with them, those people suck, and you can know for a fact that they are not real family members. Because your brother-in-law sounds like the most self-centered person on planet Earth. A group of entitled squatters move into my house while I'm away on vacation, claiming that they had a rental agreement with the owner, which is me. But despite the fact that I never agreed to these people living in my property, I decided to get some petty revenge by not only taking back my property while they were away, but also humiliating them in the process. And I'm honestly so satisfied by the way this turned out, and I really hope I never deal with them ever again. Here's what happened. So I live in a rural area about 100 kilometers out of a large regional country city area. My town has about 200 people in it, and there is no shops, meaning that the nearest shop is about 20 kilometers away. I also live with my partner, and we don't have any kids yet. Now, 4 couples who are our best friends decided that we should all go on a 4-wheel drive camping holiday together to the top of Australia on Cape York Peninsula. We organize our annual holidays to coincide together, and we would be away for just under 4 weeks. My neighbor also joined us, but his wife does not like camping or 4-wheeling, so she decided to stay at home. About 2 weeks into our trip, we are camping rough just alongside rivers, creeks, or near the beach as we very slowly meander our way up to the tip of Australia. We're doing lots of fishing and swimming in the waterfalls and all kinds of fun things. We also rarely pass through towns, and therefore have no phone reception most of the time. As we near the top, there is a town about an hour from the tip, and we call in there to fuel up and get some more supplies. But it's right when we get there that our phones start going off like crazy, with numerous missed calls, text messages, and all kinds of alerts. My neighbor's wife left many messages stating that someone had moved into my house, a man and a woman, and a small child. She did ask them what they were doing, and they stated they were friends of the owner but couldn't and would not state the owner's name. And fun fact, I'm the owner of the property. I contacted the police, who was a friend of mine, and he said that he would investigate. The following day, I returned to the fuel station, which had the phone reception, which by the way is about an hour away from our campsite, and the sergeant told me that he went to my house, and there was indeed 2 adults and a child now living in my house. In fact, they were unloading a trailer with furniture when he arrived. The male told the sergeant that he had a rental agreement with me, but upon being asked for the rental contract, he became defensive and stated that any issue between them and me was a civil matter, and that the police has no power to investigate. He also stated if pushed, he would claim squatters' rights. And after that, the police left. And it was right about here that I knew my greatest nightmare was coming true, as someone had taken over my house while I was gone, literally when I had absolutely no way of stopping them. The sergeant then told me that he couldn't remove them as it was a civil matter, even though I said they must have broken into the house to gain entry. He apologized and said that his hands were tied, so to speak. He then warned me to be careful, as if we forced them out, they could sue us for a variety of things, so be mindful on how we handle this. He said he was aware this sort of thing had been happening, where squatters prop somewhere until a court orders them out, thus getting 6 to 12 months free accommodation, or alternatively being forced out and suing for damages to get money. I returned to the campsite and I told all my friends. We then spent the next 6 hours talking about how to deal with it. We We ran through ideas from dragging them out and throwing them into the road, all the way to taking them to court. Now, going to court could take months, probably 6 to 12 months, so that was not an option. We did, however, finally decide on a course of action. The following day, I contacted my police friend, and I asked him what he thought about our plan, and he agreed it was a good decision. In fact, he often wondered why others don't do the same thing, but he reiterated that he could never advise anyone to actually take this course of action, and he was very specific that we must adhere to this plan as I described it on the phone. Don't get impatient and don't deviate to make it quicker. I need to stick to the plan. My neighbor's wife said they weren't damaging or stealing anything yet, so we decided not to return immediately. We continued on our holiday as best as we could, but we did decide to return 4 days early to enact our plan. So that meant we only had 2 more days left at the top before making our way back down south. We didn't want to ruin our much-awaited holiday with all of our lovely friends, as it possibly would be the last time all 4 couples and us could go away together like this. So my partner and I decided to make our way back home as we had planned, and we did so slowly with all the same stops and overnight stays. If we really wanted to, we could have driven back home quickly within 2 days. However, both of us felt that with this in the back of our minds, it did ruin the last half of our holiday, as we were constantly thinking about it and couldn't really enjoy our time away as much as we could have. So finally, we arrived back home, but instead of going to my house, we all go straight to my neighbor's house and we pull up there. Now this slightly spooked the squatters, as usually you don't see too many vehicles in our road, and not 5 vehicles altogether. We knew they had come outside of my house and were watching us, but we paid them no attention, and after an hour, they seemed to have fallen into a false sense of security and went back inside. We all set up our tents on our neighbor's property, which was about 100 meters away from mine. His property was slightly elevated, so we picked a good spot where we could watch them constantly without being too obvious. The next day, the squatters did nothing and stayed at the house, and the following day, it was more of the same. Now this was concerning, as our plan could only happen if they left in their car. The third morning, we saw the male leave on his own, and about 30 minutes later, he came back. We think he might have been testing the water, so to speak, just to see if we went over to the property. But of course we didn't, because we realized the female and the kid were still inside. Then at about 11 o'clock in the morning, they all got into the car and drove off. One of our friends discreetly followed behind them, and he was calling us every 15 minutes to update us as to where they were going. After they drove past the shop 20 minutes away, we presumed they were driving to the major town to shop, which is about a 3 to 4 hour return drive. We then went over to my place and removed all their property, taking it out onto the road adjacent to the fence and dumping it right there. I then got a massive big industrial chain that I have in the shed, and I secured it between the posts of my driveway, and the rest of my property is fenced in from the road. We then packed up all the tents in my neighbor's place, and everyone moved into my house. Our other friend had advised us they just hired a trailer, and we wondered if they had decided to move out, and perhaps we acted too quickly, but inevitably we decided we acted correctly. An hour later, he advised us that they were at some other house and loading furniture from that house into the trailer. He thinks they may have been relatives or friends they were previously living there with, as they seemed friendly with each other as they were hugging and talking, all as they bid their farewells. So they were coming back to my house with more furniture. We then took this opportunity to relocate all their possessions further down the road away from my driveway and possible conflict when they return. I borrowed my neighbor's tractor, scooped up all their stuff into the bucket of the tractor, and dumped it 100 meters further down the road. Then I parked just in front of the chain across the driveway with the bucket facing the road, really blocking access to my property now. My neighbor said if they tried to enter with their vehicle, then his tractor was there to let them know that we would pick up their car and flip it back onto the road. Well, they arrived an hour later, they stopped at the pile of possessions out on the road, and the male stormed up to the driveway where all 11 of us were waiting for him. This idiot tried to claim that he had an agreement with the owner until I told him I was the owner. Then he said they had squatters' rights, and we then had a really big verbal argument to which he ended up stating that we acted unlawfully and he was getting the police to ensure that he could get back onto my property. Well, sure enough, the police did arrive, and it was my sergeant friend who didn't pay much attention to this guy's rantings, because instead the sergeant just flipped the whole scenario back onto the squatters. He said to them, well, maybe while you were away, these people have squatted where you claim to live, and as such, it is a civil matter. Take it up with the court, but you cannot go into this property as it is in possession of this person right now. So pack up all your stuff on the side of the road and leave. He tried to have me charged with throwing all of his stuff out of the house onto the road, but the police asked him if he had proof that I did, namely some videos or pictures or something. His wife then falsely claimed that he had seen me do it and actually wanted to make a statement to such. Well, this is when my friend stepped up and advised the sergeant that he he had followed them all day and had them all on his dash cam. The sergeant then asked the woman what time she witnessed this, and she said it was just after lunchtime, to which my friend queued up the video to that time and advised her that he had just seen a video of her in a shopping center car park 100 kilometers away at that time, and now he wouldn't believe anything she said. On the other hand, he did say to her, "You can make a statement, but I will charge you with lying under oath." Well, after that, they left. A week later, I spoke to the sergeant, who told me he followed them around town for 30 minutes while they seemed to be scoping out other places to move into. But with the police following them everywhere, they drove back to the bigger regional town. However, to hurry them along out of town, the sergeant pulled them over and gave them a traffic ticket for overloading their trailer, as it now had twice as much crap in it. So the best thing we did when we had squatters was to wait until they all leave for shopping or whatever, and then step in and retake possession of my property. It was a lot quicker and cheaper than court, and from now on, whenever we go away on holidays, we are getting friends in the house to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I literally can't imagine how terrifying that must have been. Like seriously, you guys leave for like what, a few weeks? And these people move in and try to act like they have some kind of agreement with you. It's like, dude, that is not happening. You are not taking my house. So I seriously love the way you handled this. You just waited these idiots out because, you know, eventually they have to leave. They can't stay there forever, especially because it sounds like nobody lives in the town you live in. Like if they really want to go shopping and get good stuff, it sounds like they have to drive a long distance just to make sure they can get their stuff, leaving you plenty of time to get your stuff back. So good for you for getting everything back, because honestly, those people were massive jerks. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for pointing out to my roommate that it's not my fault she can't travel internationally since she chose to go to Canada for university? Because right now she's pissed off that she can't go to the United States with her boyfriend on a trip. And after I shut her down, she has now decided to stop talking to me. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my roommate and I have lived together for 6 months along with a third roommate, and we become good friends. We attend a Canadian university. I was born here while she currently is on student visa from India. Now, her boyfriend recently was offered a very cool opportunity to attend an academic conference in the States over the March break. It is a big deal that he was asked to attend, and the school will pay for his travel and accommodations. When he told her about this opportunity, he offered to split her plane ticket and she could stay in the hotel with him. So basically, he offered her 4 days in the States for the price of half a ticket, a hotel, and meals being covered. Well, here's the issue. She cannot legally enter the United States. And sure, technically she could, but she would need a visitor's visa, which is something that she would not be able to obtain in time for the trip. Because she is on a student visa, she is not allowed to cross the border. So now she's very upset that for one, she's missing out on a great opportunity, and secondly, her plans with her boyfriend are being changed. However, last night things reached a bit of a boiling point. It's been 2 weeks of her dragging her feet and complaining about her boyfriend's trip. And while at first we were both supportive, both me and my other roommate are starting to get a bit annoyed at the situation. Specifically, she makes a lot of remarks about it not being fair that I'm allowed to travel wherever I like, with comments I assume weren't being serious until she explained to me that she genuinely thinks it isn't fair. Once she started complaining about my last-minute United States trip that is coming up, namely the road trip to the States that my boyfriend and I decided to take on a whim, I then started getting very annoyed. In the heat of the moment, I snapped. I then pointed out to her that she chose to come to Canada on a student visa, knowing the conditions of her being here. Well, she didn't take too well to that and hasn't really spoken to me all day. I do feel bad that I snapped at her, but on the other hand, if she had chosen a different country or stayed in her home, she would be free to travel as she pleases. I don't know a whole lot about the immigration system or how unfair it might be, but she made the decision to come here, and in doing so, her right to enter the United States. Now, for context, she has told me quite a bit about her choice to study in Canada. She says that she got bored after her bachelor's degree and applied to the first Canadian university she found online, and she's not even leaving like an unsafe household or an area. So seriously, am I the jerk for saying what I did to my roommate? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. Okay, your roommate sounds super obnoxious. I can understand them complaining to a point, but seriously, the fact that they try to drag you into this, in my opinion, is not fair. And just like anybody else, I would be very sympathetic to her situation if she was at least reasonable about this. Because sure, she's missing out on a cool trip with her boyfriend, and I understand why she would be upset about that. I really think anyone would understand where she's coming from, but I think in this scenario, it's probably not about what she said, but probably the way that she said it. Because I'm imagining this went from like mild annoyance to absolutely unbearable girl within minutes. Even more to the point of her being like, wow, you get to go to the United States, but I can't. What's the deal with that? Like, I can see why that would be the breaking point and why you would be like, wait a second, this is so stupid. How am I at fault for you not going to the United States? Like, she does know that she chose to come to Canada, right? Like, seriously, this is not your fault, and the fact that she's trying to make it your fault or somehow spin you into all of this is just so weird. So no, I don't blame you for saying what you did, because it really seems like she was trying to make you feel bad about her situation. And that, in my opinion, is absolutely not fair. My obnoxious neighbor is constantly slamming the doors to a community lounge, as she feels the need to slam them as hard as possible just to make sure they close. So I decided to get some petty revenge by sabotaging the doors in such a way that they would only close if she gently closed them, resulting in this lady slamming them for minutes on end, never quite catching on exactly why it's not working. And I honestly find this entire situation hilarious, and I'm so glad that I pranked her. Here's what happened. So I live in a place where the lounge has 2 doors, both with dodgy latches. My landlord's mom, who seems to have nothing better to do with her days than lounge on the sofa all day watching tacky soap operas, has this absolutely infuriating ritual. Every time she re-enters the room, she insists the doors need to be fully shut. So she slams each door repeatedly until they latch shut. Now, what's the problem, you might be asking? Slamming one door almost always makes the other one pop open because of the air pressure. Now, instead of figuring this out, she'll go back and forth slamming one door and then the other, sometimes multiple times, until they both magically stay shut. This can go on for upwards of 10 to 15 minutes, and this is at all hours of the day and night. To make things even worse, the main door she uses to exit the room and participate in her slamming Olympics is the furthest one away from her beloved sofa. So every failed attempt means that she's trekking back and forth like it's a marathon. One day, after enduring this nonsense for far too long, I decided to have a little bit of fun. I partially filled the door latches with hot glue, just enough so that they don't latch properly unless you really gently but firmly press the door into the frame until it clicks. And trust me, the word gentle is not in this woman's vocabulary. Now, every time she slams one door, it's even easier for the other one to pop open at the slightest air pressure change. And here's where the real fun begins. Once she finally finished her door slamming ritual and flopped back onto the sofa, I wait about a minute, I crack open the door to create a minor change in the air pressure, and I listen to the chaos unfold as the door springs open again. Well, cue her exacerbated grunt, stomping back up and starting the whole exhausting process all over again. Now, what's the cherry on top of this story? She hasn't figured out how to use playback apps for her soap operas. So every time she's up slamming doors, she's missing bits of her shows. At this point, her day is less about lounging and more about managing her never-ending door drama. And I'm absolutely living it. And sure, the slamming is annoying, but watching her waste her time turning into a door-wrangling gladiator, in my opinion, is absolutely worth it. Okay, I love this for so many reasons. For starters, this is super petty and I love it. I mean, you don't take the traditional route of complaining about her or anything like that. You don't even bother talking to the landlord because you know it's his mom and they're not going to do anything about it. So I love how you sabotage this door and essentially ruined her experience of watching TV. So yeah, I find this funny and I think this is a great way to get back at somebody, because if she's going to disturb everybody in the general area with her slamming these stupid doors, then she better get used to doing that for minutes on end, because from the sounds of it, I don't think she'll ever figure out exactly why they're not closing. My parents care way too much about the location of my first job after college, as they've desperately tried to convince me that I need to stay in state, despite my career demanding that I move out of state if I want to survive. And at this point, I'm honestly so confused and I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, one piece of annoying and honestly stupid advice that my parents have given me throughout my college career is that the location of my interns and my first job after college should be a priority. For context, I'm from the suburbs of Massachusetts, and I will be working in big tech in New York City after I graduate from college this spring. This is at arguably the most prestigious company in the field. Now, as a side note, I will use terms like mid-tier company and top company, not to sound pretentious, but just to give context on the situation. Throughout college, my parents would insist that I find jobs in Massachusetts. The only reason they're fine with most places on the East Coast is because it's not that far from home. However, if it was something like California, they see that as a significant negative. Honestly, although I've never really had too much of a problem with location of my internships and my jobs, this advice affected my mentality throughout college. During my freshman and sophomore year, instead of applying anywhere and everywhere, I would not apply to internships far away because I was subconsciously thinking of what would please my parents. Even junior year, I applied to internships out of state, but if asked what I prefer, I would always mention East Coast, and even had the mindset that a job in Massachusetts would be ideal. I even told a recruiter in an interview once that location was a top priority, simply because I prefer to be close to my family, even though this was really only because of my parents. For my junior year internship, all my internship offers were out of state, so it didn't matter. My internship was at a top company. However, I think since I wasn't used to advocating for myself against my parents, if I had gotten an internship at a less recognized company in Massachusetts, my parents might have convinced me to take the latter internship because of location, even though the former was so much better for my career. Now, I know this because during my sophomore year, I worked at a good defense contractor, which was very good for a sophomore internship. However, the internship is definitely not as good as a big tech internship for junior summer. When I got an offer at a big tech company, my dad suggested that I try to see if I can get a better offer at the defense contractor. Although you can negotiate, it's clear that the defense contractor can't compete with the big tech company, especially in terms of salary, and my dad knows that. And my internship salary was not the thing that mattered. Although the contractor provides a good salary for new graduates, the big tech company provides a much better salary, even accounting for cost of living. The only reason my parents were even suggesting to still consider the contractor is purely because of location, which is terrible advice. Also, it wasn't even just about the salary. The specific big tech companies I got offers from are way better for career growth than the defense contractor. The only thing that was supposedly better about the contractor was location, which I don't even think is crucial in most cases for new graduates. It's really only now that I realize the location of the first job shouldn't be the main priority, especially if it's in a big tech hub like New York or California. If the only option at my company was to work in California, I would have still advocated against my parents to take it over a worse offer in a close location, even if the latter offer was still decent. My parents honestly expect me to sacrifice what's optimal for my early career for their comfort and me being close to home, which is honestly so stupid. When I have a conversation about this subject with my parents, their argument will be, well, what if there was a job that pays the same in Massachusetts? And they're talking about a hypothetical job in Massachusetts for new graduates that pays similarly as the top company I'll be working at. I mean, that just doesn't even exist in the first place. And sure, there's obviously times where it makes sense to make these sacrifices. Like if you have a kid or a family, but I'm literally a college graduate. I don't understand how my parents think that it should be a priority. Obviously, I think it is reasonable to make it a consideration if you have multiple competing offers in your hand, but making it my main priority as a college senior who's searching for jobs is just completely ridiculous. And the fact that my parents keep insisting is honestly so annoying. I'm glad I ended up muting this advice while job hunting later in college because it honestly could have damaged my early career. And this may sound like a rant, but I'm honestly wondering if anyone's had a similar experience and how you handled it or would have handled it in the future. Because at this point, I don't know what to do. Yes, I have to 100% agree with the original poster here, especially with the field that it sounds like they're going into. Because here's the facts. Your parents only want you to stick around because they want you to stay close to them. They want their kid to be close by so that they can still have a connection with you locally. And it's like, sure, if you had a different career plan, then maybe that might work. But it really sounds like you need to be in a big city to make this work. So for them to literally be like, oh, don't find a job out of state, stay in Massachusetts. Like that is really selfish and so annoying. And I think if I was in your shoes, I would feel the same way about like wanting to find a job that makes sense. So yeah, I think you're doing it right, and I think you've got this figured out really well. Because if you had followed your parents' advice, I really do agree with you in saying that this would have stifled your career in a major way. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.